It's that time again. Welcome to the stage. Oh yeah. Where energy and creativity collide. Here we go. Let's level up. Make this something to remember. All right.
Semifinals in the NACE 2022 fall season as Rainbow Six Siege kicks underway. Winner goes to LAN, the loser a third, fourth place, and a consolation cash prize of $625. I'm Time Delight, joined alongside me is fellow. It's JMU taking on Butler, the number 1 from the East 2 Conference, taking on the number 3 from the East 2 Conference, with Kettering, the number 2 in between, in the other semifinal. But we're only covering one. Any predictions, expectations, or thoughts coming into our series of the day?
Well, JMU, I know a little bit from previous history and a couple other collegiate leagues, but for Butler, well, it's only their statistics that really have a name for themselves so far. So maybe today, they can maybe represent that a little bit better, having us on the broadcast by their side. A quick little refresher as to how exactly we got here for our season format. We had a regular season about 8 weeks long in span. Then that led towards a conference play-in, which then proceeded afterwards with the conference championship. That would allow you to go into the playoffs that we're casting right now. If you couldn't go into the playoffs from the championship, you could do an LCQ. And then finally, that brings us to a grand finals matchup, dawning all the way into Philly, where you play in a LAN environment.
That will be December 3rd and or 4th. Rainbow Six specifically will be December 4th at 401 North Broad Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's localhost, run by localhost itself. But for this specific matchup, as we mentioned, Butler, you're talking about their statistics, by the way. 7-0 in that regular season. Let's take a look at today's schedule. We opened things up with Overwatch. It was Harrisburg losing, surprisingly enough, to the UTD Comets, with St. Clair picking up a 3-0 victory in Call of Duty. They move to LAN, as does Northwood, with a following-up victory up against Texas A&M International University. Finally, where we are now, Butler, the number 1 seed, coming into playoffs, taking on JMU, the number 5 overall, in a semifinals matchup to see who goes home and who goes to LAN.
Yeah, a 7-0 record, that is just terrifying. If I were any team that has faced against them in the regular season, I would be hoping I have my book worked down with pretty much a whole book's worth of info that I could try to get on these guys to maybe scrape away and take down some of that, I guess, flawless potential that they've been building up throughout the regular season and also playoffs too.
Yeah, and we talked about the seeding of these 3 teams, 3 of which between Butler, Kettering, and JMU, all of which came from the East 2 Conference. There were 3 different conferences, East 1, East 2, and West Central, because of how many teams are on the East/side. So, with Butler placing 7-0, it was Kettering at 6-1, and then JMU right behind at 5-2. Butler beat both of them, Kettering beat JMU, and JMU lost to both squads. They're looking to change both fortunes, assuming, of course, Kettering wins in the other semifinal, over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's a pretty long day, so to speak, here for the opposing side. The 3rd seed now, actually technically 5th. We saw the 3rd seed earlier of Kettering. My mistake. Numbers are hard, is what it is. But again, for Butler, I haven't really gotten the privilege of getting to cast them, so to speak, in the past, but maybe getting a look to see at the bracket as to how exactly the rest of the teams have really dawned out. That could maybe change the pace to see what they might be looking forward to if they end up winning this semifinal and heading on into that LAN event environment. We got to see Kettering the other day take that 2-0 win against the University of North Dakota, a pretty close bout in that, winning their own opponent's map pick. Do you think we'll still see that flawless record today, but this time for Butler rather than Kettering?
I'm going to go with maybe, but I don't think that's going to be the shot, because last time Butler and James Madison played, it was a 2-1 best-of-3 series. Butler won, but it was still close. When Kettering played JMU, it was 2-0, as it was when Butler took down Kettering. So an odd split between those three teams, all of which were the top three squads coming in. Butler 7-0, Kettering 6-1, JMU 5-2, respectively. The odd part is how the teams will decide to play this one as we take a look at our semifinals in the round of 4. It's Butler, specifically. I have to focus in on this team. If they show up, as they have throughout the regular season, they are a dangerous team to take on. Enham 100, Gravy, Big Shy, Jonesy, and Raikai coming in for the Butler Bulldogs.
And for the side of JMU, you've got Jarvis, Blue Key, Shadows, Havoc, and PK. A couple of these players I am a bit familiar with. I don't think they went under any roster changes, but I might just need a bit more of a mental evaluation since it has been a while since I've gotten the privilege of casting this team. But back then, they did still look pretty good, and with best of 3 formats being a pretty staple thing in collegiate, this shouldn't be too big of a different environment for them here for the NACE Star League.
No, not completely out of the ordinary. And for all of you who are looking at the two mascots and saying, hey, those look somewhat similar, the mascot for JMU is definitively Duke Dog of the James Madison University Dukes, whereas the Butler Bulldogs are just Bulldogs. So if that looks odd, even though you've Googled it and said, oh, wait, James Madison's the Dukes, why the heck does it look like a dog? That's specifically why. You were talking about the maps and the fact that it's a best of 3. Let's take a look at them. Bank, Border, and Skyscraper. The first map is actually Chalet, as it looks. The actual map played is Bank. Border picked by Butler, and Skyscraper the decider. What do you take away from this?
Well, to be fair, it probably would take a lot of money out of a bank to actually buy a place that's located over where Chalet is for the map. But in terms of general map pooling, this is just completely unorthodox, as you would deem it. Bank is not a really common map. Border is more of a personal preference kind of thing. And Skyscraper, a lot of teams just try to avoid that map like the plague because how complex it can be put in the right hands. I think the only thing to speak of for both Border and Skyscraper is they have a similarity that both maps are pretty small in size, but just dense in a couple of rooms that you can play in for both the attacking side and the defense. And for compositions that you want to run, nothing really changes on both Border and Skyscraper. So if you're comfortable with going to those maps, it can be pretty easy to run quote-unquote default strats, but for Bank, you have a lot more freedom because how big the map is and how viable a lot of other different compositions can be, like whether you want to go for more of a bunker kind of composition on your defense, or if you want to use the whole map to your advantage and go for more of a roam style of play.
The latter is my preference when I play the game. I also employ that on the attacking side as well. When you take full control of the full map, you also take full control of the fullest extent of those possibilities. When you condense yourself, you also condense your possibilities. Condensation, not the worst thing in the world. Of course, it's the main reason that photosynthesis can be a thing. We can all breathe. It's a nice combination. But when you lead that into Rainbow Six strats, not always the greatest solution. Of course, preference does come into fruition on that conversation, alongside some different playstyles. Some players are just not as aggressive as others. Others will just pick Alibi and run to the far side of the map and try a spawn peek. I'm other players.
I'm not gonna lie, it is one of the more satisfying things to do if you can hit your shots. The MX4 Storm is a really good gun. I fall under that leaf a couple times too, not gonna lie. We saw a lot of that aggressive style of play, especially by North Dakota yesterday when you had both Trigger, Cole, and I can't recall who the last player was. It might have also been Cole, who was playing a lot of Orcs the other day too, but I know he was fond of picking out that Jaeger and trying to go for a lot of early engagements if Trigger wasn't the one to do so on that Alibi selection. So on a map like Bank, where you can get very creative with those roam extensions, I could imagine Butler are going to want to just be in the faces of JMU as often as they can be, looking to take those open engagements. And that ban of a Nook makes total sense if they want to be on that roam game, because Nook is a fantastic operator for asserting her dominance, taking those 1-for-1s, and establishing cutoff angles to create a lot of pressure and probably work a 1-for-1 going the way of the offense.
Especially on such a large map as well. Nook is such a good operator on larger maps, and Bank is basically the largest map in the pool. I'd have to get decisive measurements on that one, but still an applicable conversation. The Jackal, to make sure that there is no full roam clearance, there just will be roam denial or flank denial, and the Nomad or Gridlock later on in this map. That's an understandable follow-up attacking ban from James Madison. That also leaves Thatcher on the board, so a big conversational point there. Miura off the board as well. James Madison apparently just don't like the Spaniards.
Can't really fault them for that. Both pretty viable operators, especially on this map. Again, we talked about how frequent you can see some sort of roam style of play by a defense. Jackal is probably one of the better operators to force back those roamers at a good time frame, while also guaranteeing that they're not going to try to play for a retake and look for some sort of separate gunfight. And a really interesting ban by Butler towards the very end of this ban phase, the Warden. So maybe on their attacks, they're going to want to try to use a lot of Ying Candelas to really enable that execute to create a lot of space and maybe just find a couple of kills if someone is a bit unprepared for those engagements.
I do have to say, though, I'm a little surprised about the Warden ban. Not usually something you see taken off the board. Also, I like the Skinnergy from the JMU side. They also have the
Very
same
epic
operator backgrounds. Skinnergy, for all of you unfamiliar, is the synergy of skins, hence the combination of the two words. I'm looking at Butler's defensive setup, though, and this isn't odd, but it is a little unordinary, I suppose. And looking at it, the main reason is, A, the environmental changes in what they bring. They bring in adding and taking away some of your environment in the shotgun from Jonesy, but also the Kiba barriers from NHAM 100. While on the other side, it's late round denial in the Vulcan canisters alongside those black eye cameras that can lead to C4 kills from that Vulcan canister wielding Goyo alongside the Valkyrie herself.
So speaking of the Valkyrie, we had one camera deployed over in server that's going to make sure if anyone creeps their way in through dirt, if someone's watching that cam, they're going to have info. Someone wants to poke into that bomb site at an early point in the round. One was deployed on the first floor, and I think the final one was somewhere up above to help enable those roamers before and after they fall back, especially when you have a couple of operators that can bring out those nitro cells. A lot of the flooring being very self-destructible. If you have the right info and the right comms, that could net you some sort of, frag going your way without having to take a risky gunfight while also falling back. So sure, you have the attack gaining some map control, but you're not going to, lose your life, and they're going to be a lot more risky. But that camera set up in server could hopefully give away the intention of Blue Key playing inside the server, if not the Thermite charge doing that. And Jarvis as well just is in the bomb site. He popped in from garage. There was a cam earlier by Shadows. Perfect info by JMU, and they've got total control of the basement.
Wasting absolutely no time, just getting onto the site and getting aggressive. A double from Jarvis to open up the site, and Shadows following up with a kill of their own. NHAM from above, as the diffuser is yet to go down. It's actually been dropped near the default plant position. A follow-up break of that Vulcan canister, but it's a 1v4 for NHAM above. Absolutely no explosives remaining. All that remains are the Vulcan canisters or whatever's already been put down for late round denial, but with Havoc having the Talon shield for safety and that full destructible or indestructible wall for safety as well. That should be the round. The spray from NHAM does find one, but it's Jarvis with a triple and James Madison with the openers. They pick up the bottom floor site and send Butler packing. The aggression not expected by this Butler defense, and James Madison pick up the first.
And Butler had all the right tools to maybe slow down that execute as well, or at least the rush by JMU, but they just were not aware that's what JMU were opting to go for. They didn't have anybody immediately by garage, nor they had no clue that there was actual info by JMU to know that position of the map was for free. So they had two people creep in from that location while the Thermite was leading the charge over by server, and they just cross-coordinate to get in the bomb site and kill the only two anchors that were there to make sure you could potentially get that diffuser down for free. However, there was Chi playing up above with that hatch present, so eventually that planter did die, but you then put yourself in a 4v2 with Butler still feeling inclined to retake if you can avoid those hatches, which for the most part JMU did, and if not, avoid the hatches by still sitting in the bottom floor. They went up Marble to immediately challenge those players that were still on the hatches to guarantee a very swift round one win.
Swift round one goes Butler, or goes JMU's way. Butler now needs to pick up something different, and they do. The only change, however, is Gravy going onto the Pulse, which is continuous information without it being able to, well, get taken away. Black eye cameras can be shot. Only Pulse can be shot to take out the cardiac sensor. Also, earlier prep is there, I think, for Butler. They do have a full setup, as we saw in the previous round, but it's a little less put together with the lack of a Valkyrie, something they may have to deal with later on. And they're playing a little bit more aggressive towards security, aware of the fact that it's a possibility. The issue, well, a round too late.
30 seconds gone. Jarvis once again just poking and prodding his way over by server. I believe last time he was a bit closer towards garage, but still gaining that early map control for his team. The Go-Go Pack going off as that breaching charge will detonate it. So bit of stall potential here for Butler, but you wouldn't want it to go away in this early round. But for JMU, one of the operators you don't want to see die off the bat is that Nomad, as if PK did not put down all their air jabs, that could allow for more flanks in the late round to maybe cause more chaos against JMU.
Talking about chaos, JMU bring 2 kills right back the other way. Shadows with the SMG-12, by the way, picking up that kill. C4 is being prepped by Gravy. It'll go through, but it doesn't find the kill. Havoc alive for the time being. Vulcan canisters broken as well to make sure that fire extends as far as possible. A follow-up C4 from Rye. It goes through, but it also doesn't land. Butler have expended all of their late-round plant denial other than those impact grenades, and those aren't as effective as one used to believe. Follow-up Talon Shield to try to keep them alive, but it's Raikai long range as they aggress on towards this bomb chassis, finding one. An immediate return is there, but an impact from above, it does indeed come through, and leads to a follow-up kill as well. Gravy will find the finish, and a 1v3 for Blukey, who doesn't know that Enham's on the hatch, and Butler find a return as they pick up the bottom floor site. Second time is indeed the charm.
And it seems for JMU, they just were not able to find a way to adapt in that situation to actually create enough pressure to get those hatch players off of the middle floor. We saw not the exact same attacking lineup by JMU, but they were still initially trying to push their way in from server, trying to work that early opening gunfight by having Butler just unaware there's someone in that part of the map so early on, and then have a bit of extra backup over by blue stairs just to make sure there's going to be no type of flank maybe during that mid round when you're setting it for the execute. On top of that, I talked about all the utility that Butler had to deny that potential post plant that we saw back in round number 1, and their lineup didn't really change all that much into round number 2. So when JMU were attempting the same strategy, but Butler were a bit more aware as to what was going down in the round, they were able to shut down those Talon shields, find a couple of kills off of that lack of coverage by JMU, and equalize fairly well to now make things 1-1 heading into round 3.
10 seconds to insertion.
Third round on the board now for Butler is they really switch things up. Instead of going to the first floor on either site, they decide to go to the top. Now, my preference of rotations usually extends top floor and then across towards the middle, but I'm now realizing that even though I just saw Jonesy on the top floor, that they agree with me in a similar way in actually going to the first floor. I did the same thing yesterday where I see somebody on a site and I'm like, wait, that's not the site.
Is what it is.
Look away for the worst time.
Happens. Anywho, for JMU, already off the bat, they're going to score a pretty solid opening kill, as that's Enham off the board. Your Smoke, one of your main stall operators, is now no longer going to, well, do his job, be that rock for your team, and once again, just give your team about 30 extra seconds to work with to maybe reset some sort of execute that JMU were trying to accomplish here. Bit of info being gathered on this top floor to acknowledge there's someone playing over by stock, and PK just racks up a kill for himself on a Jonesy. Make it 2 now with that AK as he springs into action. Finally, Big Chi is there to shut down the Nomad, but I think it's a little too late as there's 2 minutes for JMU to work with, and they only need to find 2 more defenders.
Issue, one of those 2 defenders is the Mute with the SMG-11, the other's Gravy with the C4 and Valkyrie, and is wielding the MPX. Not easy operators nor players to take off the board, but still possible for JMU. It is a 2v4, so that is the caveat that they are working with, but Butler at this point aren't playing directly on the site fully. Big Shy is playing inside a staff, sure, but they would need to re-extend across onto open area. Through that breach, the C4 almost lands, but doesn't stick to the floor, so unfortunately will not. And Butler, half of their explosives already gone, at least half between the 2 remainders. With Gravy being seen, that should spell the end of their safe roam.
Bit of a risky spot now to be in, especially having all that vertical that JMU can work with to really force back Gravy, still stuck over by Archives. Might be a matter of time before they try to fall away, but they're looking for some assistance here by Big Chi instead, just playing at the bottom of square, waiting for someone to challenge over by that staircase, looking for some sort of opportunity to make things that 2 versus 3 a little more winnable for Butler if that does go down, especially since JMU are still taking their sweet time. The C4 rips out, but it only does a minute amount of damage onto Jarvis as he's still letting letting that sledgehammer just do God's work up above to force away this Valkyrie, now having no more C4s and having no clue someone's pushing from the first floor. Big Cheese there on the swing to get an assist, but it's a bit too late now as he's stuck in a 1 versus 3, looking to find those 1-for-1 isolations. He spots the Lion by the Mel detector, but can't hit a shot against Havoc, and JMU take yet another round.
Again, aggression from James Madison that wasn't really detected from Butler as they originally entered into the map. And Butler, given the fact that they're 7-0 thus far in this season, you'd expect them to have that set up. But the issue still remains, how do they adjust later on in this map? And it's been adjustments. The second round, exactly an example of that, just it wasn't as prevalent for the third. Problem they may run into later on, but still one that isn't the worst thing for them to deal with. I still think that flexibility is there for Butler. They showed it in round 2. They do instead go to the top floor rather than back to the middle for round 4, so not as many adjustments possible. But bringing an Echo is a good one. Instead of having that mute as a secondary SAS operator, they instead bring in the Japanese yokai-wielding Echo, which I have to say is a little surprising considering the site, but should be useful considering how aggressive James Madison's been.
Hopefully able to use some of those yokais just to, again, gather more info on how exactly JMU are trying to attack in these first, few moments of the action phase, because how explosive they have been. In about less than 60 seconds, almost every single round, JMU have been looking to take a gunfight and have won it, I believe, almost every single time. Maybe the only caveat was in round number 2, but I can't quite recall how that opening engagement actually went between both JMU and Butler. On the topic still of that early engagement, JMU, again, still as aggressive as ever. They want to gather this info as fast as they can, look to find those isolated gunfights, and just play off that momentum, because how much this map can really stall you for time if you're not someone who's able to find that opening kill when you take an engagement.
Well, almost an opening kill. Jarvis takes a decent bit of damage from the UMP-45 of Jonesy, but is safe for the time being. Still wants to aggress across towards this castle, and is trying to play cutoff angles across the main lobby. I like this decision. Jarvis just trying to gain information, and not giving all that much away for it. You can see PK on the far side as well in the main entrance, doing a similar job, but with a different angle. That's around through the top of Spiral to make it sure they can clear out admin desk, if at all possible. It's still James Madison in a weird spot because a full minute's gone and they haven't made it onto the map, or into the map, I suppose, but they really don't have to. There's 4 different windows that rappel directly onto the site, and if they have the information, they could just use those to get on quickly.
There is so much damage you can deal from those window repels as well for JMU, which is why Butler are trying to deal with that problem as proactively as they can. Gravy trying to utilize his own black eye cameras to maybe find a couple of sniper shots with that MPX on anyone who's looking into the bomb site of CEO, while the rest of JMU are still looking to set up maybe a stock and square over clear to get some of those back walls opened up leading into CEOs. They could maybe get that default plant down, but with these long angles being held by Butler, if no one creeps their way from either marble or maybe even gold stairs, there's no one here to really counter Jonesy.
Jonesy's actually been seen, though, and that's an issue for them, considering the main breach inside a square has been noted. Big Shy looks across towards the double window, but does not find the kill across onto the repelled Jarvis. Shadow, a return after the opening pick did go Butler's way, it has been turned upon. The Dokebi off the board with Castle equalizing, but it's still, or at least it was, a win there for Butler. Bluekey trying to plant behind the CEO desk and should be safe in doing so. Nothing that can prevent that other than the Yokai drone, of which does just that. A follow-up from the Echo just is not theirs. They cannot spray across that bomb chassis, and with absolutely no contention from the entirety of the Butler defense, they get the diffuser down. Yeah, there's a return, and the C4 probably should find the kill, and it does. Enham finds a double, but it's still the repel to deal with, alongside Havoc as well.
Yeah, best case scenario,
what a nade!
Butler could try to run out, but that grenade is going to shut that option down completely for Butler. Enham, such limited time, such limited resources, such limited HP as well. In this 1 versus 2, turns it into a 1v1. But again, Jarvis, all he has to do is just sit outside and wait for Enham to make that first move, and he doesn't have a lot of options left to try to move himself outside and kill the sledge. He does hop in, but there isn't any time left for Butler to get that disabled down, and JMU just doing a bit of a premature celebration as he finds that last kill for the round. JMU up 3, I believe, in this first half already.
It's absurd for JMU, and it's something that Butler is not adjusting to. That quick aggression where JMU just drone it out, find information as to the whereabouts of the defenders, not even needing to find kills, but instead just looking to wipe out whatever map control was there for Butler. Congratulations, you can hold as many long angles as you want. With regards to just the second round, Butler have not been able to find long angle frags enough to deny James Madison in this real estate. And it's looked really good for James Madison. I don't know if Butler are going to be able to adjust as much as they need to over these next 2 rounds. One thing that is positive for them is they're heading back to a site of which they've already won and adjusted properly too. But is that enough? That's the real question.
Say, I would be interested to see how exactly JMU are now going to attack in this round. It seems like they want to at least have a bit of an emphasis on that top floor. They have the Habana to get those hatches opened up if they're not completely open to allow a fallback for Butler, but they also have the Thermite and Thatcher still to their disposal, so if they want to go in for a server clear like they have multiple times, maybe deal with a blue extension if Butler opting to do that, then they still have the right resources to remove that threat from the hands of Butler. But again, I talked about the hatch presence. They're probably going to want to get that control before they enter in from server, and maybe just have someone lurk into that part of the map in the late round, as Shadows is already just itching to get into the building. He finds one and now 2 from the first floor. Butler have no clue what hit them, as Shadows is already looking to maybe find a third, spots out the player up top by the metal detector, but Jonesy is quicker on the draw.
Finally, Butler brings something back, but it's again a 4v3 for them to contest with. And they just do not have enough staying power now on the defensive side because their roamers and main fraggers that they brought into the round are gone. Butler's 3 remaining players have a combined 3 kills in 4.5 rounds. Jonesy, the half rounds that I'm talking about in that situation. And now, how do they adjust? The extent of their plant denial is still prevalent, but I suppose the VIPs in terms of fragging power are gone. It's really just late round stall potential that's there, and you have the correct operators for it, but is it enough considering how much JMU now has back in their favor?
Might honestly be up to Jonesy to maybe find a way to stall with some of those toxic smokes in the mid-round, because again, I could imagine JMU want to do another server over clear, so having someone play over by blue and maybe just be a martyr to try to find a couple of kills and just again waste more time with those toxic babes could be a good idea, but it is such a high-risk, high-reward situation that Butler just might not be in a position to do something like that because they already have their hands kind of tied, and maybe keeping some of those toxic babes alive now that a lot of those oil packs have been destroyed could be the saving grace to make sure if JMU still struggle a bit with setting up for that execute, they might be punished if they're short on time.
Time management, always difficult to deal with, especially considering the 3 operators that still are on the board for the defensive side. 3 toxic babes, that's 45 seconds of area denial, but with now just 1 C4 remaining, that's a problem they could run into. Gravy holding a long angle across towards that bomb chassis on the back side at a bare minimum. The default plant position being aggressed upon, but there goes the first toxic babe. Jonesy using the second, but close range needs to be able to use the M590, now dubbed the clothesline to find kills. At least finds a first. Looking for a swing onto the second, still has a toxic babe remaining, but also has to worry about that hatch position, of which has yet to be fully locked down by the defensive side. Final toxic babes used. That'll give about 13 seconds for the attacking side to aggress onto the site and get that diffuser down safely without taking any damage from the final bit of lethality on the defense.
Honestly, at this part, maybe having just Jarvis dropped on the hatch could be a good idea once that smoke goes down. That would force Jonesy to look both to his side and the people trying to cover. Beautiful spray, though, by Jonesy. Could maybe find this ace, but the hatch player is still holding strong. The right call made by Jarvis as it's too good of coverage to force away the smoke player. And now a 2 versus 1 post plant will be forced against the smoke of Jonesy, trying to creep his way back in a CCTV room. He spots out a drone. There's info on the smoke that he's now getting aggressive over by server room, but both players on JMU are just sitting up above and really forcing Jonesy to play his hand into a really rough spot. Jonesy popping out a Goyo pack maybe to create some space, but Blue Key is there waiting above on the square hatch. And once again, James Madison University looked fantastic for the first half of Bang.
I'm going to give a fat NT to Jonesy. That was very well done, at least well attempted on the defensive side, but it was a virtual 1v4 as a smoke with 1 toxic babe remaining. And honestly, that's just not enough. They had to be able to come back, and Butler are put in susceptible positions in a followed-up round in which, well, that's happened 3 of 4 times, in which they've lost rounds 4 of 5, if you really look at it, considering they've lost 4 of the 5 rounds we've played. They'll head back to the bottom floor. It's the only site that they have won thus far, however, a 33% win rate, certainly less than advantageous. I'm going to give it probably to JMU. I hate to make a prediction, especially considering Butler's dominance in other maps and other series, but James Madison have been looking so good in this map that you'd be a fool to doubt their attacking side, and apparently I was a fool to predict Butler, at least for the series, because this is only map 1 and it was JMU's
10 seconds
map
remaining.
pick.
Hate to mention this though, fun fact for all of Twitch chat, Dan is a known hater. So to all you Butler fans in chat,
All right, hold
don't
the
take it
phone.
personal.
No. We're gonna address these allegations head on, Mr. John Fellow commentate. No, so I was called a hater yesterday because I did not know North Dakota. It was not hating on North Dakota, it was commending the known variable of Kettering. I will not take this slander on broadcast.
Well, you just did, whether you like it or not. It's written in history right now, so we'll have to see if Butler can make some history and find
Actually,
another
I believe
round
it's
win
libel.
on their own.
Libel is spoken. Yeah, that's libel. I will not take this libel on broadcast.
Well, at least you have the correct grammar to use, I suppose. For JMU, they've had a overall pretty good attacking ideology for Bank, and for Butler, it looks like they're trying to adapt at least a little bit. They acknowledge that JMU are relying heavily on that info in the early round to facilitate those gunfights, so they bring a hard counter of Gravy on the Mozzie. I think that's a fantastic pick, and not only that, but you don't have to supplement away a Nitro Cell, for example, because Mozzie can simply bring one, and so far, it looks like that was a pretty good adaptation by Butler, as Jarvis, one of those main entry fraggers, is now gone, besides,
Oh my gosh.
you know, Shadow and PK, of course, which, speaking of one of the two, he does find an instant trade, so that Nitro Cell and Mozzie player is now gone.
I thought Gravy was going to find that return, though. Nice play from NHAM, playing behind their own Kiba barrier, and that's the adaptation of your environment. Yeah, sometimes you remove your environment, that being soft walls or hard breaches that come through, but adding your environment is something that's very unique to the Azami, and one facet of the game that was different that a lot of players just were not ready for. This is a nasty angle, by the way. Imagine having lineups for Kiba barriers and having them be that gross on the defensive side. Havoc does find a return, so NHAM is dealt with, inevitably doesn't find all that much with that single angle. Raikai, unfortunately, unable to find the cross angle across on towards Shadows as well, so still beneficial for JMU, but Butler being condensed upon can still find this. Also, Jonesy, he's on the other side of the shield, brings out the Mossberg, finds one somehow, Blue Key dropped where they stand, the diffuser down on site, and Jonesy was none the wiser until they heard the diffuser start to go down. The refrags there, follow-up almost from Shadows, does not come through, but it's still a 2v2.
Well, thank God Jonesy has ears, able to take care of the Thermite, and that might just save them the round as Big Chi gets rid of Havoc as well. Shadows trying to work his way back into the bomb site, picking up that diffuser, and he might be aware the player has rotated back
That's
inside
smart.
of server, but there's Goyopax to keep the Jaeger at bay, now desperately low on HP, and Shadows playing off that Vulcan pack will now try to rotate and isolate this one defender who's a bit closer towards that bomb site to maybe try to get this diffuser down with ease of mind, knowing where the other defender is in this 1v2, but he's so low on time and so low on options, he'll opt to stick this diffuser down with no info as to where Raikai is playing at, and a quick back shot will guarantee Butler on their 3rd attempt here for the basement floor bomb site, if not the 4th attempt, will finally sink it down and make it 2-4.
And 2 of 4 on the bottom floor for Butler's defense. Same for JMU, technically, depending on how you look at it, but it was a little bit more of a positive, considering Butler were at least able to pick up 2 rounds to salvage that first half. Not the end of the world by any means. A 4-2 first half split is certainly not the greatest thing as you switch onto the attacking side, especially that of Bank, which is such a large map to deal with, but it's still something that Butler can come back from. They didn't go 7-0 for a reason, or for no reason, I suppose. But James Madison, in that same right, they also didn't pick Bank for no reason. So it's really the duality of man as we move to the second half.
Definitely interested to see how versed JMU are going to be on their opponent's map pick of Border, I could imagine it's not going to be two very one-sided matches. Maybe Butler comes back a little bit on their attacking half, having a bit more room to be that, pacemaker. But for Border, it is a very different map to play on in comparison to Bank, so there is definitely a good change for duality, like you mentioned, Dan, but I guess we'll have to focus on the now and the change-up with Butler on their attacking half for round number 7. JMU opting to start their way over in on CEO and Executive, with Butler, like I predicted earlier, are probably going to be hard-locking the Ying because they're the ones that wanted to ban Warden. No hard counter for that Ying means they can make a lot of space if using her gadget correctly.
And on the top floor, the best place to use her gadget. So many soft breaches between the windows, and you can even put it through hard walls just the same. Similar to that of Enham with these Argus cameras. Zero is my favorite operator in the game for the flexibility he provides. The cameras not only are, well, basically tasers that take out any semblance of defensive utility if you zap them in the correct spot, but also free cameras that can use 2 different lines of sight if you put them in the correct positions. Pair that alongside a fairly good gun in the SC3000K and secondary hard breaches, basically everything that you could ask for other than a 2.0 on the SC3000, and even then, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Big Chi looking to maybe creep his way up the marble stairs. Could be a pretty bold and brazen play, but at least there is a bit of info being helped out by Gravy and also some flank watch by the Zero of Enham. As Butler, I believe, just got the elevator/Canto wall opened up a few seconds ago with the help of those Selma charges. So it's going to be a little bit easier to isolate that player who's over by the elevator position. But I think there was a bit of util to actually stop some of that wall from being fully opened up, so it's not the worst case scenario for Blue Key, but he's still definitely a bit more exposed than what he was at, a moment ago. There's still an angle for that cutoff on the window rappel, and you can still try to isolate Blue Key, which Chi does so, but Jarvis is there on the trade, and your Ying using no Candelas is now dead. Oh, oh no! There's no way! We just caught that, too.
Jarvis, that...
I'm so sorry, Jarvis.
So, no... I would say, oh yeah, Jarvis is trying to hit the hatch and blow that up, but even if he hit the hatch, he still would have blown himself up. It's not like hard walls give you more damage with an impact, and that's going to be the round as well. That loss from below, really costly. Not able to find a way out and not able to find a kill on that bottom side. Havoc now in a 1v3 as they aggress towards the CEO windows, looking straight up as Gravy completely exits stage up. And the problem for JMU is you have a castle of whom has absolutely no utility in a 1v3 with arguably one of the worst guns in the game, depending on how you use it.
UMP-45 is a pretty tricky gun, but thankfully does have that 1.5 optic, so those mid-range engagements are not impossible for the lone castle. He does find one, but unfortunately Raikai is there swinging through Banana with that AK-12. Butler, on the second half, already looking much better than what they were at, based off of a solid info game and overall pretty coordination as well to creep their way up elevator and work that entry kill.
What's the response now from JMU? Or does it come through? The response seemingly is go to the bottom floor. And I like this decision. I am not a fan, just as Scott, as we mentioned yesterday, is not a fan of going back to the exact same site after you lose it. I love Scott. I keep bringing him up because, I kind of miss him. Heart for Scott. I'm not on camera, but you get the general idea.
Real.
But it's down to whether Butler has the adjustment to the bottom floor as well. They do have the operator lineup, I think, for it. Zero's still fairly good on the bottom floor. It's just how you deal with possibilities of mute jammers, of which are not being brought by the defensive side. But this is a weird defensive setup. No smoke whatsoever. In place of that's actually the Tachanka, which is a fairly good substitute, if I do say so myself. Still a pseudo shotgun in the DP27, but also having long-range potential with the close-range obviousness of the Bearing 9, similar to that of Blue Key. It's different, but I'm not going to say it's wrong unless they get absolutely wiped off the board. And even then, Butler played the correct comp and then got wiped off the board 2 of 4 times. So you never know.
Butler looking for a couple of last-second changes. Maybe looking to implement more of that top floor styled attack, and then probably lurking once again towards server once again, as they do have a bit of extra hard breach again, bringing out Enham with the Zero. the secondary hard breaches can definitely help enable to at least make a crouch hole to creep your way into CCTV and get that default plant down. And although they don't have a main vertical player of a Buck or a Sledge, having an Ashe and Zofia with some breaching charges in the mix too can add enough of vertical pressure to force some people away from both Archives and Tellers, two very focal points for the defense to use to work some of those early kills. And Big Chi, he didn't know it, but there was a guy towards bottom square near that staircase in shadows. Thankfully, he looked above him, spotted the Zofia, and now Big Chi is dead off the rip.
A great opener for JMU. Dropping Big Chi is something that they had difficulties with in the previous round, and not only that, it's the Zofia gone as well. It's a lot of fragging potential off the board early, and Butler now have to adjust. What in their playstyle do they have to change, given the fact it's a bottom floor attack and they don't have two different explosives and two different concussive blasts to work around? Gravy formality clears out the janitor stock room, but I don't know if their opponent was actually inside a stock or inside of the CEO office. I believe it was CEO.
Well, the Yokai attempted to be shot out. I don't think Gravy was able to land it, but PK lands the shot with that P10 Roni, spots another by top square, but runs out of ammunition and runs out of HP, more specifically. Butler finally clearing out this top floor, but they still have a lot more to work with in this next minute 20, as JMU aren't too willing to give up that first floor just yet, still having a couple of lurkers by that location, and a lot of fallback potential as well, having those hatches opened up, having the several amounts of staircases to your disposal as well. So for Butler, if they do not play their cards right, they could maybe lose another attacker on this clear or just allow JMU to fall back with that man advantage.
Man advantage still there for JMU, as it has been in multiple rounds thus far. The issue, they've lost a lot of real estate. They still occupy Tellers, but everywhere else on this first floor, not really in their control. That's Jarvis inside of Tellers, by the way, but Butler really leaving themselves only maybe two avenues of attack, and those are down through hatches. Fairly tunnel visioned at this point. ADS is taken off the board. Vault also occupied. I believe that's by the Echo in the back corner of the sites. But it's still the worry of not clearing out this first floor, and Raikai may die through that rotate they've created prior. Still something to be wary about as they start to aggress onto the site.
Sun's flying out, burning a bit of extra utility, and the Habana just drops it down with a diffuser in their back pocket. Jonesy, a good spray onto Blue Key, and there goes that plant attempt, but Jarvis is there from the top floor, shooting through the hatch, kills the Habana, and now Butler are scrambling with only 4 seconds to go. Havoc's been down, but it's only Henham left to stand, and Shadows cleans him up with that T5 SMG. JMU still holding strong, despite the surprise attack done by Butler.
Butler just dropped through the hatches, but it was that roam again that cost them. Not clearing out the first floor, whether it be by drones or otherwise, of which, by the way, they had 4 available, or 3 between the 3 remaining living players to work with. They droned out the bottom side, sure. They had the Argus cameras up, yeah, but they didn't use the 2 remaining Argus cameras from Enham to make sure they could clear out whatever semblance of what could have been a lurk or a flank to clear out. And that cost them. Now it's JMU with round and round, just 2 rounds required. I think they're going to reinforce the top floor hatch. I want to get your opinion on this one. When you go open area / staff, do you reinforce the stock hatch or do you leave it open?
I reinforce it because some executes happen through that hatch. So if you leave it soft, then if a vert player is available, which 9 times out of 10 when you go that site, there's going to be a vert player. He's going to get that open for free, and now all of open area is just a death trap. And that vertical player is also going to probably clear out Archives and Tellers, so you can't even proxy around the bomb site. You just don't have a lot of options if you leave that hatch unreinforced. So better safe than sorry is the motto. And Butler, for a second, I thought Big Chi would maybe want to rush in from perimeter window, but it looks like he's just instead prepping the window and maybe looking for a blind fire to get some sort of early pick for free, and then he'll assist the rest of his teammates going up on that top floor to do that previously mentioned clear.
Boo. Rushes are more fun, Big Chi. Can't believe you. I'm mostly kidding. But it's still down to what does Butler do? I was talking about the adjustments required from Butler, and they really just didn't adjust for the bottom floor take. If they had that composition on the first floor, sure, it may have worked, and they are actually bringing something fairly similar. Gravy switching onto the sledge should work fairly well in their favor. The nades will be viable on this first floor setup, but Jonesy on the Dokebi is really where my focus is lied. Well, that's where they lied, and then Jonesy died. So, you know, Dokebi off the board, but so is the Mozzie. So equalization of trades of possible utility, maybe? Question mark? I don't know.
Minute burned away. Last round, more specifically, we saw how effective JMU could stall away Butler on their roam clear and how that costed them in the late round when they were trying to execute into that basement floor bomb site. But this time for Butler, looks like they've turned a new leaf. They've got that man advantage firmly secured in their back pocket, and the roamers on that top floor are now removed. The only main roamers you might need to worry about in this round is if someone's playing on that basement floor and they want to try to lurk their way up either blue or marble stairs. Besides that, you've got a couple of lurkers over by both Tellers and Archives that might try to go for a one-for-one kill here and there, but besides that, they're looking to fall back once enough pressure is put onto them. But however, for Jarvis, there's no one here to really instigate him so far. He might just try to creep his way up gold stairs if he's got good info, and that could maybe cause a lot of chaos in these final 60 seconds.
Something that's chaotic, especially for Butler, is clearing out the possibility of another roam from that same side of the map. Jarvis is yet to fully aggress and is still just playing patient, but they have been droned out of position. No easy way for them to stay safe for the time being. A nade down to force them out of that corner, and then as they swing at 3 different angles, no easy way to find the kill. They'll be down and taken out of commission as it's Enham to find the finish, but Butler overall to clear out the roam and really start to focus in on the site. It's just Havoc and Blue Key, and Havoc wielding not only those Evil Eyes, but 2 impact grenades as well, will be the VIP of the defensive side. I don't know if they're going to be able to prevent all 4 players as they aggress, though.
The cross attack coming in by Butler as well, both from Square and the hatches as well. There's even a player of Gravy out by that printer window to maybe kill the Maestro, and he does so with such grace, and there's Big Chi with the assist from that Square doorway looking in a kitchen. Sure, they had info, but they didn't have the players to really work off of that information, and Butler with a fantastic roam clear and isolation onto Jarvis as he had no fallback, guarantees them the man advantage and still a close game on Bang.
Back to a 1-round deficit for Butler as they replicate a similar scenario from 2 rounds prior. Again, they have to consecutively pick up rounds. Back to the top floor, James Madison will go, and previous iterations of this site have looked chaotic, to say the very least. Butler was entirely unsuccessful on the top floor, except for when they attacked it that one time. And the one issue, can they now meld that into continued success on the attack? James Madison will make a few flexible decisions. Havoc is on that castle once more, but a weird decision with 2 SAS operators again. I have to say, of all the sites on Bank, this is the least favorable one for a smoke.
Especially since you can be so vulnerable to, again, all those window repels, all those pressure points that Butler can get for free because they're all on the outside of the map. So you have to be very conservative with just how you're playing, when you're going to swing, when you want to use your toxic smokes, because again, you're still a valuable operator to stopping that plant from going down, especially when Butler are looking to have a, relatively speaking, explosive execute. It might take them a lot of time to set up, but with them relying on the Ying for these attacks, that is going to allow them to make a lot of room to get into that bomb site. And again, I've said this phrase a couple of times, just create that chaos element, so you're going to have more factors that JMU has to be concerned about, especially if there isn't going to be a very heavy roam kind of play style by JMU for this attack or this defensive setup, pardon.
Set up in a fairly good position though. Gravy breaking 2 windows open and almost dying from both of them. Drone thrown in, immediately taken care of, so information to work with has been taken off the board. And Butler now need to flex to what has been set up for them. I do think James Madison are making pretty good adjustments compared to the last time they were on the top floor. Not fully swinging onto anything, not really giving long angles the time of day either, but with Enham picking up the opener, Jarvis will still fall first. Magnets are picking up some utility. The jump out from Shadows will find one, but an immediate refrag is there with 2 different players repelled. Yeah, you've taken the sledge off the board, but they had just thrown both of their nades. The VIP of Big Chi is still alive and still kicking to try to aggress onto the site as they throw in their utility.
Good shot there by PK, but here's the hop in through the double window. The Candela's fully blinding Havoc as well as Jonesy just sticks down that plant, and the castle barricade kind of denying Havoc of getting back in the bomb site. It's a forced retake by not only Butler's Candelas, but the castle barricades by Havoc. But the castle, speak of the devil, tries for the run out, but has no clue where to look at in this position as there's 3 separate bodies all zoning on this poor Soul as he gets constant info directed against him. N-Hand lands a clean shot onto Blue Key as well. And PK, once again, the lack of info will be his downfall, hopping through that double window, and Butler tie us up.
Big Chi picking up that Ying was a VIP. The smoke's thrown down for the long angles of JMU alongside the Candelas thrown into the opposing site. Basically removed any sound cues or visual cues as to the plant going down. There was nothing whatsoever that James Madison could have done about that because the only thing they had to deny was Blue Key's C4, of which they didn't even know where to throw, and well, they also weren't even on the correct side as they tried to push forward. It was so well put together and so well timed by Butler's attack. The droning was well done. They had all 10 drones as they walked into action phase. By the time they were walking onto site, they had only lost 3 and they had used 9. That's how information-based the Butler side was as they tried to aggress. Opposite situation this time around, because they've lost 4 of 5 drones during the prep phase, so, you know, as I talk about it, they decide, well, not really.
For JMU as well, Shadows, albeit I did like the idea of hopping out on that window just to, you know, make a little more space for your teammates. Having you be the player to initiate that as the smoke is a pretty big red flag because, again, you're one of the only operators that can really deny Butler of just hopping in from the windows and getting that diffuser down. Once Butler realized that the threat of that smoke was no longer available to JMU, they just simply hop in. Again, they have all those Candelas to make space, and they have total site control because JMU have locked themselves out of the bomb site, and they're basically on the outside looking in, figuring out what exactly to do now in this 3v3 post plant. For Butler, though, Jonesy is already inside of server and might be looking to go his way up through blue stairs, just validating that there's no one playing by here. And if there's any roamers that want to fall back from that position, he's going to be greeting them with that vector. But for right now, that doesn't really seem to be the case.
I'm getting deja vu as to the setup of JMU in the first half, where they would basically just crowd around the site, find information, and then press a giant green go button and send it. And it would work. That's the scary part, and Big Chi's prepping that. The explosive out here for the lifeline is they're going to break the barbed wire and that barricade. They should just be trying to aggress forward. They want to make sure that any plant denial here for the defensive side will not play a part in the plant actually going down. Yeah, the hatch is open, but nobody's directly on it. Yeah, they have the Tachanka, but not in the correct position as of right now. If they time this correctly, they'll be in a great spot. The EE1D used. Havoc will try to aggress, but will immediately fall. Blue Key soon to follow. Any plant denials already off the board, and Ham a follow-up kill as well as they just aggress forward. Absolutely no time wasted for the Butler attack. They press the big red button, and it explodes James Madison's defense as they go on to map point for Bank.
3 round wins in a row, and the catalyst to all of it, those fantastic rush plays done by Butler. They had the info, they had the timing, and they had the damage to dish it all out, and like you mentioned, secure map point against JMU, a team earlier in this game, looked phenomenal. They were looking incredible in the first half, a 4-2 split going their way on the attack, but for their defensive rounds, the way they've been setting up against Butler has just left them vulnerable to what Butler are trying to do. And again, we talk about that aggression. Normally for the defensive team, if your opponents are looking to get aggressive, you have to be a very adaptable team. You have to react in time and understand how you could maybe set up those crossfires, set up those tag teams to make sure these rush plays can be immediately shut down. But again, for JMU, they just are not expecting for Butler to be so gung-ho in a lot of these engagements, giving them the upper hand and finding all this success in the early round and with the Tachanka and with several other players dead in the basement floor and with no one really being able to watch over that hatch, Butler just had complete control of the bomb site once again, kind of like what they had the round before this one. So it's been nothing but net for them so far in the second half as JMU are, for the first time in this game, on the back foot.
I'm still surprised they're on the back foot. I cannot believe that Butler have come back, especially on the attacking side. I was looking at this saying, oh yeah, defensive side of Bank, James Madison map pick. Sure, they should be in a pretty good spot. I also said, hey, Butler didn't go 7-0 for no reason. There were really arguments for both teams to pick up this map, and Butler apparently winning the debate club, I suppose, assuming they probably have one. There are a lot of students that go there. There's got to be a debate club somewhere. But James Madison, now the response leads to them. They will go staff an open area, understandably so, but even this site was chaotic last time around, and Butler didn't win it fully decisively, but they still picked it up cleanly so.
I'm glad to, at the very least, see a timeout being called by JMU, though. There are just some teams that avoid a timeout like the plague, and I know that's technically the role of, like, a coach in most teams, period, but still your captain or someone on your team is going to be the one to want to call that timeout eventually. So just taking a moment to get a bit of a mental reset, just take a moment to breathe, and maybe just talk amongst one another to see what you want to have improved in your general play style. That can go a long way to find a round win or two against your opponents of Butler. And the biggest reason why I have an issue with people going on for timeouts during match point is you don't have a lot of room for that adjustability. You've got one round to get that big shot, and that's really it. And now for Butler, if overtime gets procced, if they want to go for a timeout, if they're on the defensive half, for example, off the bat, then they have the luxury to do so. So from the get-go, JMU, they're just once again on that back foot I mentioned earlier, despite going in for a timeout.
Odd setup for them. Frost on the board, first time that she will be brought into the fray. Everybody else played for at least the second time or more often than that. I like the decision to go into the Pulse. The one issue I foresee is that there's no reachable floor on the bottom side of the site to possibly deny plants later on. I also like the information gain from the Valkyrie. That combination should be good for the bare minimum info, but it's still not actionable intel unless you are directly on the site and in a good position to deal with this defense. You could play directly above from the site itself, but not as great of a position to lock down. Gravy onto about 9 HP, if that, does a decent bit back onto PK, but not nearly as much as they've received.
Still alive, though, able to maybe do his job as the vertical player of Sledge if they can clear out this top floor. PK hasn't been really opposed to moving back down below, so he's still going to be just wasting time for as long as he can, really, just sitting up here at that 1.5 optic, having a couple of rotations if need be. And there's info with the help of Havoc. A lot of this flooring from the, second floor looking down into the first floor, that can lead to Havoc maybe ripping out a C4 at just the right time to maybe work some sort of opening gunfight and just, again, allow that stall potential for JMU to make sure Butler are just kind of sitting ducks when trying to not only clear out this top floor, but maybe worry about that vertical pressure against them.
Shy still looking up top and has yet to fully lock it out. And, well, speaking of being locked out, there's Havoc from below. As soon as Big She walks onto a soft reachable floor, they fall. PK finds Jonesy through the stand of a monitor, and Jonesy, none the wiser, is dropped because of it. As is the diffuser, by the way. JMU, if this was a way to retake, this would be nearly perfect. Another note is that there's a frost mat on the top of spiral stairs. PK will back away in towards the elevator, will reload that ITA, and drop out. Has a castle barricade for protection, at least for the time being. But there's a minute left in the round. There's absolutely no site control for Butler, and they don't even have the diffuser in their pocket, much less the clearance of a rogue.
At JMU as well, they still have control of archives and tellers, so if you were Butler, the best option would be to maybe just try to work a bit of vertical, but you're so limited on time, that can be such a gamble when then converting down to the middle floor. Butler might just not have a lot of players to really gamble as an option there to go for that verticality. It's a 2 versus 5 going against them, and Gravy being one of those two players alive. He is so low in HP, you could throw a pillow at him and he'd probably drop down to the ground just bleeding out on the floor. So for Butler, this might be overtime on the docket for them, and it is, as Shadows will find one kill looking right around Marble Stairs, and the second one not too far behind as well. Overtime lockdown for map 1 of Bank, Dan.
OT for the first time on stream, at least for R6. We've seen it twice elsewhere, at least off stream, but not directly on. A brief look to the past for when these two teams last played. Butler and JMU. Map 1 went to Butler, it was 7-2. Map 2 was JMU's at a 7-4 round scoreline when the decider went Butler's way. I unfortunately do not have maps written down because the teams were, not required to report them. But I do have the rounds list. We were nowhere near OT at the bare minimum.
There were a couple of games, off stream during like the round of 16 that were pretty close. I remember North Dakota specifically winning a game 8-7 and then 7-5 in their best of 3. But that would be, again, like the closest that you had mentioned earlier. So we haven't really seen a genuine barn burner, as Chief would dread to hear that word being said. But I think this is a valid statement to say, because it's overtime already on map 1 on a very variety-based map of Bank. You don't get to see this selection in Collegiate all the time, despite how old the map is. If you look back to when it was originally introduced into Siege Comp, JMU looking to have a slightly different lineup from what we have seen in the past. I think the biggest difference now is having Maestro for the basement and a Kaid for that hatch denial. And for Butler, that Kaid could actually be a problem because they don't have any secondary EMPs or a regular EMP operator of that Thatcher, for example. So I'm interested to see how they maybe adapt around that Kaid pick.
I'm a little surprised they didn't just attack or repick onto something that could deal with it. They have, as you mentioned, their secondary EMPs. Wait, the Argus cameras. Those
that
work.
Would be a big if. Yeah, maybe. I would love to see that happen.
Something that, hey, I was talking about it earlier, the zapping effect. I don't know the specific name for it, because it probably has one, but nobody ever played Zero enough for me to remember. But it's still JMU maybe needing to flex around that. There is, again, no mute to deal with those Argus cameras. It's just sound cues and being able to drop them visually. Butler started off on the attacking side, as was selected by them, which is a little, as was selected by JMU, expecting for the defensive side to be predominant, but that just has not been the case. 4-2 splits for the attack on both halves leads us to 6-6. But JMU, I think for the first time in the series, occupy Garage. And, well, there's the Goyo, and there goes the drip.
Butler, I believe, realizing they can't try to get into either server or the hatch is not too far away from the CCTV bomb site, so they're looking to go for maybe a vault and elevator hatch drop, along with someone working their way in from marble stairs. There's Gravy having that cutoff angle, but PK will dodge a majority of those bullets, looking to find a headshot onto that Jaeger. So it's still the 5-on-5, and Butler still looking to set up that execute. They still have loads of info with those logic bombs and with those regular drones as well. So for that department, they look fine. But in a 5-on-5 with 1 minute left to go and a lot of utility to slow down or stall out Butler completely, JMU still look to be in a very good spot despite that info.
And the very good spot is actually multiple positions. They have so much map control, considering how many players are still on the board. That, and the utility still available. That is the first of 3 Toxic Babes. 15 seconds a pop with 45 seconds left in the round means that those will be available for the rest of the round, assuming that this smoke is not taken care of beforehand. Shadows in the next 2 or 3 seconds should use the second. There it goes, there it pops, and they stay alive as they back away. Jarvis finds the opening kill as well. 1 minute and 33 seconds into the round, or 2 minutes and 33 seconds into the round, they find that opener. Final Toxic Babes used. It'll be a C4 to deny the plant, but Butler have no easy way of entry. This round is almost certainly just a formality as it comes to a close. They have to walk straight through Toxic Babes, but they still find kills. A return from Jarvis finds a double, a triple on the round, and it's a 1v3 for Enham on the far side of the map. No diffuser and no hope, as JMU find map point technically second, but first in OT.
And the option to just bunker up was the play, because how limited Butler were in terms of options to try and close out that round. A timeout now being called by Butler, as well as they are now back on the opposing side in terms of round advantages against JMU. But like I had mentioned, nothing to open up those main hatches. JMU's best option was to maybe get alert going down from Garage and Marble Stairs, while having the rest of the offense just work their way from either the hatch of Elevator or Vault. But with Butler just not being, I don't know, potentially comfortable with that play, or just maybe expecting JMU to counter that because they had pretty good info. There was a guy both Marble and maybe trying to work their way down the Vault hatch. They said, you know what, maybe it's best we just try to last second rotate and win the rat race to get into CCTV room and potentially get that defuser down. Only issue with that is there was still a smoke watching that position with his own utility, and B, he can just come to the rest of his teammates to pop those Goyo packs, throw out some C4s, and just start mowing them down with that LMG of the Alda wielded by Havoc as well. So there was still plenty of, counter options that JMU had for that default site attack of CCTV. So in reality, it may have seemed like a big fear factor for, Butler to go in through those 2 hatch drops, almost a bit of a Hail Mary, but that, between just dive bombing into several Goyo packs, toxic smokes, and LMGs, I think it's just the lesser of two evils, Dan.
Well, the main evil was utility, and you were
Right.
talking about how much utility was available. I'm going to give you a list. With a minute left, there were 2 Goyo canisters around the default position, 3 Toxic Babes, and 2 C4s, all available for usage or already put down on the floor. The first Toxic Babe was used at the 45-second mark, as it should be for a main-sided attack. Follow-up C4 was there about 15 seconds later, alongside the second Toxic Babe. Third Toxic Babe with about 17, 19 seconds left, give or take. The final C4 used as well. That also took out the second of 2 Goyo canisters. The final Goyo canister was actually dropped on the main stairs, which didn't allow Enham to push forward, and they couldn't find any easy access onto the site. It was just so well disciplined in defensive utility usage for that JMU side, to the point where even if Butler found just about every single kill possible, they just would not have had enough health to make it through the utility dump that was on the defensive side. Most of the time, when you hear the words utility dump, you think, oh, the attacks just decided to throw a bunch of flashes and smokes in to clear out ADSs or magnets. No,
5 seconds to insertion.
surprisingly not the case. The defense was the one wielding as many projectiles
Attackers
as
are
they
moving
were.
out to locate a bomb and defuse it.
And for Butler to play devil's advocate, JMU, sorry, hate to stutter there, they never brought a Cade throughout the entirety of their defensive half, so they didn't really think it was a requirement to waste a drone or two in the bomb site to double check if there's a Cade. It's just be common knowledge that there is going to be no Cade. They don't deem it necessary to bring out those pocket EMPs or a Thatcher, so you can't really fault them. It was just a good trick up by JMU to maybe guarantee a bit more site safety by having those hatches still enclosed. Butler now looking to return the favor, have the Kaid in the hands of Raikai, but JMU do not want to have the same problem arrive at their doorstep when they're trying to enter in through CCTV with no hatch present. So Havoc, will bring up the Thatcher to make sure that's not an issue.
I like Thatcher, and I also like the drones used on the attack, already clearing out the black eye that was pocketed inside of security. Follow-up is found inside of the site itself, alongside both Vulcan canisters, which are placed in fairly impactful positions. The one issue, when they're seen, they can be easily naded out of position. Gravy finding the opener, it's a big first pick for the defensive side, exactly what they need. The Dokebi off the board removes a lot of possible information later on in the round, but just like that, Gravy's also taken off the board, albeit a less impactful operator later on when push and utilities comes to shove, but still an impactful pick nonetheless.
I would have to, still give that credit over to Butler as well. Gravy can just sit on cams, gather info for his teammates, and kind of help guide their hand as to how exactly JMU are looking to execute in this next minute 20. A nade tossed out maybe to force anyone back that's a bit deeper towards CCTV itself, instead of maybe looking to break down some of those shields or Vulcan packs that are just across the wall from shadows. Toxic Babe deployed, forcing away that Iana for a little while longer, as the rest of JMU are looking to still get these hatches opened up, and thankfully with Havoc still alive, he can help enable the Habana to do her job with those Habana pellets.
Skyros will take down both hatches. Blue Key will get all 3 hatches down, as a matter of fact, still with 6 X-Kairos left on the board. But the problem still arise here for JMU. They do have a multi-dimensional attack, that being through the hatch, but they still have to clear out a lot of this defensive utility. I was talking about the Vulcan canisters earlier on. Neither of them have been cleared out of position. Here goes that breach charge that should clear out the first of 2, but there's still 1 left available, near that default plant position no less, and with 20 seconds of effective area of effect for the defense, they're in a good spot. The last one's broken with about 25 seconds on the board, and it's alongside that follow-up Toxic Babe, but it's still enough that they cannot get the diffuser in. Blue Key has no simple way onto the site unless they just quickly drop the hatch. Jarvis will find the opener from the long angle towards the main door. As they walk straight through, Shadows will make it through alive. The diffuser being put down, but Big Chai finds the kill. A follow-up is there. The Mossberg finds one, looking for a second, may not even need it. It's Jarvis in a 1v3. They vacate the premises, look to go towards the hatch, but they may just not have enough time. Big Chi uses that C4, but does so too early. They'll hop on the defuse, but they're not watching the hatch. It's actually Jonesy to do so. Butler will force a 15th and final round on Bang.
And it was the best option for JMU to just drop the hatch, having Blue Key stick that defuser closer to the wall, but there was no one up by garage or marble stairs to look down that long angle and kill the people closer towards Gold Vault, and that was the main issue with having a couple of players just dead and two of your players that was still alive looking over by server. You can just dedicate one guy to that position and either have multiple people looking down on the hatch, or like I mentioned, get a guy to lurk last second over by garage. We saw earlier in the game JMU utilize that garage position to net 2 separate kills off the back of, I believe it was Jarvis on the Zofia at the time. So really, that could have helped punch JMU's ticket out of bank and onto border with an 8-6 victory. However, Butler, they were able to keep cool, calm, and collected against not only that hatch drop, but the server attack looking to CCTV, because they had all the right tools for the job. One of those tools being the M590 that is just oh so damaging at that range.
Any range, honestly. It's basically a sniper at this point. If Callie was to find a rework, they would just slap the lance on the bottom of the M590 and give it to her. Because honestly, it would still be just as useful. And a little bit of a wider spread because pellets exist. That would be the best I could imagine in terms of Callie reworks. If Ubisoft devs are listening, Callie just is not played enough because the sniper is mid. But I digress, mainly because I suck. My accuracy is below mid, which makes Callie mid. Other than that, she's actually fairly good. But JMU's defense flexing to something similar that they've brought prior. They'll go staff and open. This was the site they won to send us to OT with the exact same operator composition as round 12. The Frost, something different, but it also allows them to play flexibly on the top floor without having to worry about late round utility. Similar to that of the Valkyrie, just wielding a C4, it's the combination of that and the pulse for information, but Butler's wasting absolutely no time. They want to aggress, and they'll do so fairly quickly. Do they clear the close corner? Not quickly enough, but Big Shy still finds the follow-up. It's a 4v2 in 52 seconds as PK, the last one alive on a Frost, to retake. Diffuser will go down. It becomes a 1v3 before that is the case, but it's still nearly impossible here for PK, and it is indeed, as Big Shy finds a triple and Butler find map 1.
Butler ending out bank with a bang, as if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They go to the over-reliable strat of just rushing into the bomb site, and it seemed like for JMU they could once again not react in time. They take their opponent's map pick and still stay flawless for the playoff game.
That's insane from Butler as well. They were like, well, JMU used it a few times against us, especially in round 1 when we had absolutely no idea. Why don't we absolutely throw them off, similar to that they've done to us? And it worked, albeit in a very scary fashion. Big Shy's kind of nuts at this game, but this is how it worked. Walking straight in, kind of baiting out Jonesy, but Jonesy just didn't clear their corner. Kind of their fault. Still, it was Butler dominance, and they well and truly deserve that 15th round and the map as a whole, coming back from the 4-2 deficit, coming back from down a round. That's how they needed to come back from that map.
And as well for Butler, the worst thing that's going to happen is that they lose the round, sure, but it's their opponent's map pick, and they still kept it really close. So on border, they most certainly have great prospects against JMU, especially if they're not too comfortable with that map to be played on in a best-of-3 format. But honestly, for this collegiate season, a lot of teams have surprised me with their map preferences. We have seen a lot of border in this fall semester, and we're going to see a little bit more of border as well. But before we go into that, we'll take a quick little break and be back with the NACE Star League with this R6 playoff match. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Well, after a barn burner over on Bank, Dan, we get to see Butler head over to the arid ranges of border to see if they're going to find that flawless sweep 2-0, or if we have JMU find the upset and redemption arc they've been looking for to set their tickets over to Philly to play in that grand finals position here for R6.
It's Butler with a win and in situation. JMU are just fighting for a third map of Skyscraper, of which is the great unknown between these two teams. They didn't go to Skyscraper during their regular season matchup. That I have confirmation on. However, the other maps I have absolutely no idea. It's down to whether Butler can play around their own map selection and win it. This is a similar situation as to what we saw yesterday, where Kettering picked up map 1 and then walked away with map number 2 after a fairly decent comeback. It was just the comeback required on map 1 here for Butler, as they now moved to their own map selection.
Once again, I talked about that potential of not being too comfortable on your opponent's map pick. We see that a couple of times. I think I made a good example of that the other day with Kettering on a map like Chalet. That's probably one of their weaker maps, yet they were still able to take it against their opponents of North Dakota just a day ago. So maybe JMU could also find that potential, I guess, just spurt of liquid gold, so to speak, here on Border to see if they can end up heading on to Skyscraper. Starting things out with an Osa ban, not a horrible option, since for Butler on their attack, they brought her out pretty frequently, and she is quite good on this map, too.
Yeah, but honestly, for JMU, so did they. So
that is true.
It's sometimes shooting yourself in the foot rather than are you shooting your opponents in the foot. However, completely different attacker bans than what we saw back on map 1. Not banning the Nook, I understand. The Jackal, I suppose, similar conversation considering how small Border is. It's only 2 floors, plus a roof and a few terraces alongside a condensed central deity, I guess you could work around. How do you play around it? The answer? By banning Mira. Apparently nobody likes Mira. Both teams have now banned her.
Well, she's also quite good on, I guess, every map for the competitive pool. You see her used a lot to help extend into Fountain for a lot longer, for example. Sometimes put over in that top floor near, I guess, that CCTV corner that's near the hatch that you tend to fall away from, near a rotate hole as well. So she can be used to hold down a lot of very empowering angles, sometimes even put in the bomb site as well towards armory and lockers. So it's just, ease of mind that you don't have to worry about that when you're trying to execute or deal with some of those lurkers after you clear out the main facet of Roam Extension. And for Border, I talked about how small it can be in size. You tend to focus a lot of your attacking prowess over by immediately towards Armory, for example, in some rounds, depending on the bomb site, if it could be in Ventilation, for example, or you might want to do an East over clear, starting out by that Valley spawn, working your way from the top of East Stairs, getting Office Control, and then slowly creeping your way over by CCTV as well. But all things considered, the top floor is top priority for most teams on almost every single round for Border.
Priority has to be lateral clears and quick, especially for these more questionable setups. I'm not going to say questionable just yet, considering JMU hasn't finished how they're setting up, but given the fact they're going ventilation first, it requires such a large extension throughout so much of the map, and ventilation's usually the third decision for a lot of teams. Most of the time it goes bathroom tellers and then arsenal and archives, or vice versa, and then ventilation workshop. The option to go here first shows confidence, but also I'd have to say shows a little bit of caution for Butler, as they will have to back away and or just play a little bit more cautiously.
30 seconds gone. I thought for a second Butler might want to try and get that jail wall opened up, but it seems like they will start, for the most part, over in this top floor, beginning to maybe work their way over towards that armory extension, having the Jackal as well by CCTV, just to gather a couple of footprints if someone has extended towards that part of the map. So pretty standard stuff by Butler at the very beginning of this round. And once they do clear out those roamers as well on the top floor, they can begin to work down some very potent vertical play with the help of that Sledge, Zofia, and Jackal, whatever they need during that time of the round, and still have some hard breach in case those hatches are opened up as well. So all things considered, Butler, they have a fairly standard comp for clearing out this top floor. It's just finding a way to get that opening on these roamers in both Fountain and the position of Armory.
Fountain already known and occupied by this alibi, but Jonesy was so close, and PK had no idea. A follow-up from Big Shy, as they are able to drop Shadows out of contention, means that the entirety of JMU has to drop, quite literally, down to the bottom floor. Jarvis will drop through the hatch, but it's Blue Key to fall. A C4 from Havoc, as the Pulse again comes to fruition. The question, is it enough, as a 2v4 is now in front of JMU in round 1?
Jarvis looking to maybe find a kill or two over by the metal detector, but if he walks a little bit too aggressively, that might give away his location completely against the side of Butler, and he cannot make these mistakes in a 2 versus 4. Spots out one, looking through the vertical. Down goes Jonesy on that Sledge roll, and he's got active pings to work off of as well, not just the vertical angles to help assist. Some stuns come flying out here by the Habana, still playing outside of that singular window, but for right now, they're looking to gather info just to make sure if there is someone playing on that vertical, and if they need to rotate to try to isolate the one guy who's actually still in the bomb site.
Isolation, always something that can be felt, especially when you're left alone. Havoc in that current situation, with Jarvis so far removed from his current teammate. However, dropping down the hatch is fairly well timed by the mute. Only one C4 left over for JMU, and now with the death of Jarvis, it leads to just 0. Havoc in a 1v3. UMP in hand and stunned out of position, but still finds a double. Looking to swing onto the third, has the live ping onto Enham, who's on 1 HP. A single shot from the UMP needs to come through, but it won't. It's rather 2 in the body from the L8 on the other side, and Butler to find the opening kill and the attack as James Madison narrowly have a clutch factor, but it just does not come through quickly enough.
Valiant effort there by Havoc to almost win the 1v3 dream situation, but Butler, just having a little more HP to throw out the problem, still find the round win off a very well coordinated attacking roam clear, having again both that pressure building up over by Armory so that player in that top floor cannot assist the guy by Fountain, and I believe both the Sledge and Jackal cross coordinating to kill the guy on the deployable shield, so they have grenades to destroy that shield if need be, and also, you know, build up more longer angles with that secondary shotgun and sledgehammer to fully guarantee they can pinpoint out this alibi with the assistance of those Inox scanners too, to make her really uncomfortable in that technical speaking 2 versus 1. You had total top floor control, you worked a load of verticality, found a couple of more kills in that process, and then it just became a 3 versus 1 all up to the hands of Havoc. He didn't make it close, but again, it's just process of elimination, and eventually Butler could do exactly that. And now, for their troubles, they get to attack the top floor of Archives and Armory.
This is usually one of the primary or secondary sites for a defensive side. I was going with it, and I said Ventilation Workshop is a precautionary tale there for Butler. James Edison looked confident on it, but they were just torn apart. Their top floor defense just was not expecting such a proactive clearance of their hold. Combine that alongside just the mechanical prowess of Butler, James Madison was not quick enough to respond, whether it be mechanically to adjust their actual aim or their setup itself. It was just so well and quickly put together from the Bulldogs. There just was not a response on that defense. Now, James Madison's response is to go to the top floor. Absolutely no roam on the bottom floor whatsoever. They do extend in towards CCTV and around towards Fountain as expected, but nothing in terms of a roam on the first floor is a little concerning if you're the Dukes, considering that's just a whole lot of time denial that you do not have available.
Once again, Butler looking to set up this cross-contamination on the top floor, except this time the bomb site's actually lying in wait over in that position of Armory and Archives. Here comes the run out by Jarvis, having the info of that castle barricade being meleeed, and no one's there to find a trade on the Jarvis, so he gets that 1-for-1 on your only hard breacher in this attack, and he is oh so valuable when clearing out not only the bomb site itself, but also the extension that tends to lie in wait over by offices as well. So for Butler, their options in this round just became far more limited.
Attackers drop the diffuser.
Losing the ace is such a VIP, and yeah, you have the Thatcher, congratulations. You don't have secondary breach charges on Jonesy, nor do you have a secondary hard breacher, period. A problem has now arose for Butler, one that was not foreseen. There was a claymore on the window, just surprisingly not one on the door before trying to clear out the castle barricade, and that's a questionable decision. The Aruni ponytail has been seen on the backside, or the Azami, so many with an ending vowel sounds, but the Azami's ponytail has been seen on the backside of the half wall. Certainly dies there, and does indeed. Nice shot from Enham. That is a soft wall on the other side of that CCTV side, but Jonesy trying to fake somebody out of position may just die looking the wrong way at the bad time, and a 2v4 for Jim Butler now.
Still holding strong here on this top floor for JMU. Once again, very limited angles that Butler can really work around, even with this skeleton key, making a viable entryway for Jonesy. There's an evil eye camera just constantly pinging this poor sap, and Enham not too far behind. It seems like most of JMU are aware that the attack is mostly going to end up happening from the Armory side. There's Blue Key with the spring up with that Alda, and now that leaves just Jonesy, soon to follow hand, this time by the gun barrel of Havoc, still running the UMP 45. JMU once again tie us up and keep things pretty close from the get-go.
Exactly what James Madison needed to return. Similar to that of Butler in the first half of map 1, it's a return, but this time it's on a different site. They'll go Bathroom Tellers as their third site selection, technically second to try and pick up in a row. I like the decision. Avoid Ventilation Workshop as long as you can. do not go back to a site in which you were mostly dominated on. Yeah, it ended in a 1v1, but that was down to clutch potential, and that's not something that you can rely on. I talked about this yesterday. Clutch potential is a good thing to fall back on should you desperately need it, but if you rely on it round in and round out, it's something that'll cost you more than it'll help you later on when series comes to close.
Attackers have located a bomb.
So now for Butler, biggest concern for them is just keeping those high-value operators alive and making sure they can really pinpoint that coordination factor throughout the whole round. As I could see for Butler, they were trying to do more or less kind of not a full East overtake, but still have somebody over by CCTV that wasn't just Raikai. The only problem is he was still trying to poke and prod his way over near that castle barricade, which gave away the fact that there was a guy on that part of the balcony, allowing Jarvis to net that 1-for-1 kill on, again, your only hard breacher you had on a fairly hard breach-oriented site of Armory and Lockers. This time, I think the bigger operator you'd want to keep alive is Jonesy on that sledge, because again, it's a lower floor bomb site, and a lot of these rooms have soft destructible flooring, so if Butler can keep the sledge alive and active, then they're going to have a lot of free range to push back those defenders once they secure that top floor control, which for JMU, they probably have a couple roamers up above, but for the most part, it isn't as much as we've seen in both round 1 and 2.
Rumors of the top floor, again, are here for delay. Gravy has a lot of info to work with, though. The C7 in hand, and also being given real-time info around that drone, means they can quickly aggress. The C4 from below misses, surprisingly enough, as Blue Key pops that just a few seconds too late. So the Ionox camera will find at least one player's whereabouts, and actionable intel that nobody else is on this top floor. It is a very quick clear from Butler. A minute gone of the round, as is the entirety of a lurk or roam from the Dukes. Good start for the attack.
Gravy's still looking in to find a bit of extra utility here. Some cap can traps being destroyed on that top floor, as a good chunk of Butler is now looking to maybe rotate around. Big Shy, if he had maybe just tapped a couple shots there through that window, he might have found a kill, but of course he doesn't have the overlay that we do, so he's got no clue somebody's in stock for the time being. However, with the help of that vertical, Jonesy does spot out Blue Key and now begins to drone a little bit further down towards that bottom floor to maybe help assist Big Shy once he gets ready to lead that initial charge. And now Enham might be looking to join him as well, but instead it's over towards the east staircase rather than towards front lobby.
Second of 3 C4s also already used for the JMU defense. Jarvis finds a kill with the SMG-11, though. The C4 didn't find anything. The SMG-11, not so much. It does find a kill. Enham directly on the outside of the site, and one of those windows in towards Tellers is actually open. This is a way in for Enham without too many sound cues made. There's not a frost on the board. At very best, there's EDDs on that window, but even then, not a certainty for the defensive side. Something they'll have to be wary of should the aggression start to come through from Butler. And there it is. Big Shy finding a kill onto PK. Again, man advantage goes the way of Butler as they continue this aggression. So many castle barricades to deal with, but they're now walking in towards ventilation, and Jarvis is taken care of. That's exactly what they were looking for. The down onto Enham, who did jump through the window, but there were EDDs there. That's what JMU were relying on, and that's what finds it down, but not a kill just yet.
20 seconds to go now. Butler still have that theoretical man advantage and could potentially try to stick down this defuse. There's Big Shy with the initiation, having info on Havoc's location. Wraps up another headshot for this round, but here comes Shadows with such great patience. Finds one kill, looks for the second, almost transitions onto Gravy, and the reattempt will be clean. The shotgun for the confirmation, and now sets us in a technical 1 versus 1 as Enham is still bleeding out on the floor. And so far for Shadows, he still has enough time to maybe work his way against the Habana inside of bathroom, but that natural cover currently favoring Raikai. He's got no info, just has to work off that audio. A blind fire could happen by Shadows. He spots the head and connects with a clean shot with that UMP-45. Plenty of time left to defuse, and Shadows able to land the clutch on the castle. JMU keep the advantage now.
Flexibility just was not there for Butler. They didn't try to extend back to the top floor. Yeah, with a 4v2 they were there. Enham falling inside of that EDD, however, probably cost them the round. The clutch potential was then there. Even with Havoc falling, Shadows was only in a 1v3. They find the first kill long range. You were talking about the discipline to make sure they find the kill, and it does indeed come through. A switch onto Gravy, who just could not adjust quickly enough, and then able to shut down Raikai in the end. Surprisingly not enough for Butler. Even with a doubled up man advantage in 2 separate situations, technically a 3v2 and then a 3v1 as it followed, they just couldn't find the finishing kills. And James Madison will now head back to Ventilation Workshop, but instead of being down a round as they were when they left it last time, they're now up a round as they look to at least secure a possible halftime tie as we split.
And those castle barricades, in particular, as well for JMU, were kind of a double-edged sword last round, because with those castle barricades, denying those cutoff angles that you can tend to have over by, ventilation, over by the customs double door that looks all the way down that main hallway, with those castle barricades being there, it was just a straight shot for Butler to get into the workshop position and then just start to barrel into the bomb site with 3 players all against 1. Luckily for JMU, in that same breath, they also only had to worry about maybe 1 or 2 angles that Butler could have to their disposal, and they were still setting up for that execute without the assistance of that top floor coverage. So it also did help JMU just a small amount heading into that post-plant situation, but it almost backfired on them completely because it did allow Butler to set up quite smoothly.
There's also that smooth defense that basically allowed them to flourish later on. The Aruni actually comes through this time for Shadows, the Mark 14 in hand, but dropping down a hatch is perfectly safe for the time being. Gravy didn't hear the sound cue of the hatch breaking, considering that fist of Shadows breaks it fairly silently, and they will drone out the security room, see the fact that the hatch is open, and then jump in fairly safely. There is a return, as PK is dropped, so is Big Shy. Again, the Zofia is off the board fairly early, but so is that fragging potential of the Alibi. PK yet to find a kill here on border may cost them later on.
And although he's currently 0-3, he was popping off earlier on Bank, so just a bit of a slow startup on border. Can't really fault him for that. Like you mentioned, there was still a trade, so not the end of the world here for JMU, as they're still looking to gather some info with the help of Havoc on this pulse. The cardiac sensor not detecting anyone just yet, but for JMU, they do expect Butler at any given moment to hop in through that armory doorway and try to once again set up those vertical angles, get the hatches opened up, and then try to rotate down below into that first floor to maybe poke and prod over by those windows to try to plant in from that ventilation side of the map. And Jarvis, still playing up above, funny enough. If he waits long enough in this round, he might be able to find a kill or 2 if Butler were all hard focused on that top floor. And there it is! Just a good cutoff angle found by Jarvis, and he just gets out of dodge.
The issue, well, 2 kills have been returned, but just like that, so are back the other way. With Shadows finding a second, that is a 2v2. Shadows isn't really near the site, and a sound cue of that punch opening up the window should allow them to plant down this diffuser fairly safely. Jarvis will break down the barricade as they look to aggress forward, but the diffuser's planted, and there's no easy way in. Jarvis walks straight into Raikai's gunfire, and instead of a reactive gunfight, it's Raikai being proactive this time around. Learning from the previous round, we all need to learn things. Butler do just that and pick up a tied-up scoreline once more.
The saying goes, swing or be swung, and I think Butler had to learn that the hard way on round 3, JMU having the favor returned to them by Butler as well, and at least ventilation has been a good sight for Butler. I think it's been pretty much the same storyline so far that we had all the way back in Bank, where it was like just CCTV and locker room that was favoring Butler back on Bank, and now it's kind of the same thing here on border, except now ventilation and workshop. Don't know if that's gonna, have any foreshadowing added onto it as well as to having Butler win their map pick of border, but maybe if they are able to, maybe elaborate a bit more on their attacking style when they're on other sites like Armory, for example, maybe that could help kick them in the right direction, since I'm not too sure if we're gonna have really ventilation back in play throughout the rest of this first half.
I'm not sure. They may go back to ventilation, but I don't know if that's going to be the greatest decision for them. They've won Bathroom Tellers, and Arsenal Archives was a chaotic site, I think, for the defensive side, and they want to maybe stray away from that chaos. So the solution, at least as of right now, is go originally to Armory Archives and then follow up with Bathroom Tellers should it be a requisite. I don't know if JMU would actually select Armory Archives over Bathroom Tellers should they lose this, though. It'd be a weird spot for them, because they just barely won the bottom floor. Do they want to just barely try it again?
I mean, compare that to Customs, which is a really tough bomb site. Still might be a better option. Again, that lesser of two evils. Oh, this might be deadly here. Big Shy's got the breaching charge set up, pops it open, but the Malusi does evade it. for the time being, actually across a bit of hard walling too, as they get all the way back down into offices and now archives. And across the board, you've got Jarvis once again scoring that opening kill against Gravy this time, rather than Raikai on the ace. And Jonesy there for the first time on the Ying does get a spray down onto Shadows, but is very low in HP off that, so he'll have to value himself to be a little bit more higher and not want to take some of those early gunfights, as those Candelas are really going to build up their value if we get later into this action phase with her still alive.
Yes, it's really a requisite around being alive, though. Candelas can have as much value as you want. That spray somehow doesn't do damage unless they're through a fully reinforced wall. Big Shy hopping in towards the office/fountain side will take away that bulletproof camera, and then do at least take a decent bit of damage. Pop open that castle barricade as well, but with the area of effect of that concussion towards 90, they'll at least know if somebody's in the general vicinity. It was PK, I believe, as they've now repositioned. Blue Key with the holographic and suppressor on the Ulda, but they just do not know that Archives has already been taken. Enham just walks on towards the site and in towards the opposing side. A double now with the L8 in hand, wasting absolutely no time getting aggressive. That should also be a fairly safe plant spot, but they decide to plant elsewhere. They're wasting no time getting this down. A minute still on the clock, and they have a 1v3 to contest against Havoc with. He's done it before. Certainly possible. Not so much this time around. Butler will gain a third.
At least able to have that information and keep Raikai alive. We saw the value he was able to bring out more specifically in that round. Getting the archives wall opened up, being able to push back some people over by Office and Fountain, create that space for Butler to do their job and get the diffuser down. But of course, in terms of space making, I cannot just, not mention Enham, who found 2 separate kills just hopping into archives. That has been something Butler is really good at for their attacking half, is just gathering info, spotting out these weaknesses by James Madison, and just, taking the opportunity to punish them for those small openings, like we just saw earlier by Enham realizing no one's properly playing by archives and he can maybe work a gunfight or two to create that space to play for the objective of that round. And Butler not opting to go down into bathroom, they suit themselves better off in armory and lockers, which I can't really fault them for. They have had cleaner rounds in this position since they have got a more proper win that didn't come down to 1vx previous in this first half.
1vx's are nice, but I said it before, don't rely on them. I'm not going to go into the whole spiel, but you get the general idea. JMU haven't, and 1 out of 2 rounds they've picked up, certainly possible for them to come back. That just happened.
Attackers are moving out to locate a bomb and defuse it.
They just lost a combined 120 HP between 2 players because an impact was thrown at a teammate point blank. Jarvis tried to throw an impact at a wall and open up a rotate, instead landed onto Shadows, and now they're both at 50 HP. Not the greatest position for them to be in. Could cost them later on should they get into literally any gunfight that isn't a headshot. Not a good position.
Repel coming up by Raikai. Gravy is there as the primary entry for this position. Breaching charge goes off. Window can be used for Butler to have just an extra angle. Seems like the Maestro's trying to go for a bit of a blind fire. Raikai trying to return the favor. Neither one losing any HP, which is kind of a bonus for JMU because they're already a bit lower in that aspect, like we have both mentioned at this point now. Maybe Raikai on the second attempt could maybe connect on the Maestro. He's just not moving a single muscle and almost spots the kill onto that ace, but for Raikai, he's able to dodge most of those bullets and just get back to safety. The rest of Butler looking to execute him from offices. There goes the first kill for PK, and Big Shy with the denial of that proxy alarm allows Shadows to spring up and kill the Zofia. And now for JMU, it doesn't matter they're low in HP because they're up 2 players.
It's a player advantage versus the HP advantage, both of which at this point mostly favor JMU, with Blue Key especially finding Gravy. A 2v4, certainly ability to come back. We've seen it before. We've seen it specifically in this map from JMU, but Butler's going to have to match it, and with less HP, and most importantly on the attacking side, where, well, they have the pressure of time against them. They'll need to aggress either in towards offices or around towards the security side. Raikai trying to drone, at least first thing. They do have 4 drones available between the 2 remaining players, of which 7 are technically on the board. So they're not out of this one just yet, but it's really difficult for them to actually come back from this, especially considering their current weapons.
They do know that Fountain is cleared up. But also for JMU, they still know there's someone by offices with the help of that proxy alarm and the EMPs being tossed out by NHAM. There's Jarvis on the swing from that back hallway, still playing a bit closer towards CCTV as well, as the map control just wasn't really there for Butler in this round, and they might pay the ultimate price with another round loss to their name. But all things considered, they were at a 2-4 split against them on Bank, so at least for here, theoretically speaking, it could just be a simple 3-on-3 half. Not the worst thing for a map like Border, but the night is still young. Maybe NHAM can win this 1-versus-4, but he is very low on time, and again, there's plenty of info by JMU, so they know exactly how they should be trying to play. I think there's even a flank coming up east stairs. Yeah, there's the Azami of Jarvis, just causing even more havoc against NHAM, as he really is just in a rock and a hard space at this point, and will now just proceed to fizzle out the timer and just allow JMU to take the round, but I can't fault him. He's in a 1v4, and there's several angles being used against him.
Either save the KD or walk in and die and lose the round. Well, you're going to lose the round either way. Might as well keep one death less on the board. Bragging rights maybe later on against teammates or, to trash talk people on Twitter. There's always reasonings. Guarantee it. But Butler still lose the round, and will now switch to the defensive side of their own map pick, dead even. Last time we saw a team switch onto the defensive side, it was JMU onto their own map pick, up 2 rounds. This time, it's Butler at a dead even scoreline. I'm not going to say anybody has a definitive advantage, but the only one that honestly would be there is Butler because it's their own map selection.
And for Butler, seems like they want to start out over in Bathroom and Tellers. They have both the Warden and the Kaid available to them, so really looking to rely on that anchor position if they can. But they aren't just putting all of their eggs into one basket as well. They still understand the importance of extending up above, denying that vertical if JMU want to go for it, and also maybe utilizing that vertical to their own advantage if an execute is able to be built up by JMU without fully clearing out that top floor, as Butler are using those castle barricades to help create a couple of choke point positions just to make JMU's life a little more challenging when going for this top floor clear, similar to what they did, funny enough, in the first half.
Attackers are moving out to locate a bomb and defuse it.
Again, these teams and series are giving me alarming deja vu. It's kind of concerning at this point, especially when we're not even playing the same maps. That's when it really starts to become, hey, am I sure I'm casting a different series? But, I know definitively I am. Shadow's throwing off the fact that they're trying to aggress quickly. JMU, ever so poetically, would probably be the team to, in the first round of each half they're attacking, just hold W and quickly aggress onto the site. Obviously not the case here, but still probably would have worked, considering there's only one player in the site's vicinity.
Be losing a bit of damage, but probably just a couple blind fires here and there by Butler on the top floor. Speaking of PK, though, on that Jackal, along with having a couple of good info ops, such as Blue Key, for example, on the 0, that can help enable to force away the roamers at a much faster rate than the typical use of just regular drones, and also having Havoc on the flank watch of Gridlock can make sure you keep that top floor in your grasp throughout the whole round once you actually clear out those roamers playing up above. PK, though, might just say, you know what, forget about this top floor, let's just hit the bomb site. He's got backup by Jarvis as well, and they have complete control of Tellers looking to stick this plant. There's PK with the swing, good coverage so far, and Blue Key confirming this defuse to be put on the ground. JMU are up 5-2 with nothing to slow them down.
JMU, the type of guy to rush a site the first round of each attacking half, and it's worked out both times. Gravy clears out that 90 desk, but I think this is all formality, maybe saving the KD, another positive option for Butler. A 1v4 this time around, and the timer ticking against them. Now 13 seconds to even hop on the diffuser, much less win the round itself. That time continually depleting away, and with 3 players still to find, absolutely no shot at it. Not even enough time to get on the diffuser, much less stick it all the way through with 3 players still on the board. And Gravy, in the second round running, will have and be a Butler player to attempt to save the KD, but they will be unsuccessful in doing so. James Madison, back-to-back rounds to return. We're down 3-2, now up 4-3.
And unfortunately there, for a site like Tellers, that vertical play I mentioned, it's pretty lacking. So for JMU to be able to walk into the bomb site, ignore a lot of those roamers up above, and be able to skip past that extension by Customs too, there was nothing left to stop them from confirming that post plant, especially since they were watching over by bathroom as well, and they had people sitting outside on the window too. So again, there were really no options for Butler to safely retake, in that man disadvantage turned into an even bigger man disadvantage of a 5-on-2. You're basically just signing your will at that point, because you know the round's going to end with your own demise, and JMU proving that point quite literally, getting their 4th round win in map number 2, and Butler now just saying, let's just ignore bathroom for now and try something more default.
Archives for Butler. I still think that Bathroom and Tellers is a very good site, and their setup actually wasn't that bad. The main problem was the fact that just nobody was on the site whatsoever. They had not a single player on the actual premises of either site. If you had like 1 or 2, sure, you would have had sound cues, you would have been prepped to get out. That would have made sense. But they didn't at all, and basically just left the door open for JMU, and they learned from their mistakes in map 1, their mistakes notably being not occupying the site and being prepped for a JMU quick rush on that defensive side. They apparently didn't carry over what they had learned into map 2. It may be a different map, but the strat's not changing all that much for the Dukes.
Like the play here by JMU, there is only one op that can hard counter this Montaigne plant, and that's going to be the smoke, because there are no C4s, no more impact grenades as well for the Wamai. So if they can actually get past these castle barricades and burn the util of those ADS's magnets and smokes, then there is going to be nothing that will stop them from entering the bomb site, getting down that diffuser, and playing a rather comfortable post plant from the outside, looking back in with that case on the ground. Here comes Jarvis just being that brick wall, being that mountain for his team, but Jonesy threads the needle on the glass, playing over by that AC window. A Prisma thrown out, funny enough, to maybe gather some pocket info, but that's not going to stop the plant. The bigger picture at fault here. Shadows with a grenade finds a kill onto Raikai, and now we're looking at a 4v4 post plant situation with JMU having a man advantage after Havoc with the pistol whips it down onto Big Chai. And there just is nothing left that Butler can try to do except maybe force back that Montaigne and stick the disable, but they have to worry about Shadows as well, who just isn't too far away. If no one can watch away from that AC window, this could be a potential swing out by the Nook to do so much damage. Here's Enham with the pick, but he's not able to stop that disable in time. There's Jarvis with the pistol kill. Jonesy dropped down, the Deagle reigning supreme against that player in the bomb site, and Gravy finally eliminated by Havoc. JMU, another good read on a quick execute, now puts them up 2 rounds against Butler.
Yeah, and Butler are going to slow things down. They need to. And the way, well, they're going to call a timeout. James Madison so well put together in that round. Basically, all they had to do was slow down their attack and then, again, press the go button. That is seemingly the 5th or 6th rush we've seen in just under 2 full maps by both teams combined. And the problem currently sits for the JMU attack. Can they try it again? Because, well, congratulations, you can rush. It worked twice over, and Butler really didn't have all that much of a response. No C4s available, as you mentioned, no impacts remaining at the end, only Toxic Babe, of which were not thrown in the correct position. But there was nothing. And there was no response, at least not quickly enough to deal with the Montaigne, very well put together, and JMU again, early on, off of the information in the prep phase, with the drones, find not only the kills, plural, but the plant and time in their favor. And there was no response from the Bulldogs.
Glad to see Butler at least calling the timeout before it actually goes down into match point. They have a little bit more room for error, and it is just the way that these rounds are being played out by JMU that is costing them these positions. They don't have the right utility to really slow down JMU when they want to go in for those executes, and they haven't also been aware, at least one of the 2 rounds, as to what JMU were going to implement on their attacking play, because you had the Bathroom Tellers bomb site where they just immediately hopped in from the Tellers window. They ignored the the customs extension, and the players up above still roaming, able to get that diffuser down, have a 5-on-2. And then for that round, sure, Butler were aware that the plant was going down, but they didn't have anyone to run out from offices. They didn't have any utility to push away the Montaigne besides those Toxic Babes. So it was just a pretty straightforward execute by JMU, and now with Butler looking to reattempt that same bomb site, it is a little shocking that they don't bring out any new operators, but maybe for JMU, they're not going to want to try the same thing twice in a row.
I honestly would love to see just JMU try it and see how it works, just for my own curiosity's sake, because Butler know it's a possibility, but do they have anything to contest with it? Yeah, again, they have the Toxic Babes. They will not have any impacts available at that time. I'm assuming Big Shy will most likely use that final one, and even if they did only have one, it's just not enough damage quickly enough to deal with the aggression. But no Montaigne this time around, so no French shield. Feels bad, man. I was hoping. It really was.
Especially because how well it worked last time for JMU. Maybe even just not going archives and trying an armory plant like you do in rank, that might have still worked as well, but you know, I can't really nitpick too much here by JMU. They don't want to be overly complacent on their attacking rounds, and they want to be a little more creative this time ago for round number 9, although their lineup looks a lot more default than the one last round actually did. Gathering a bit of info over from this western balcony, seeing how many anchors are actually set up, and seeing if there's anyone extending over by Office and Fountain. The safe answer is probably yes, because that triple wall is fully reinforced, so JMU are probably going to have to fight a bit more tooth and nail in that portion of the map if they want to take it.
It's a similar take that, well, Butler was attempting towards Office, and a similar rotation allowed by Butler leads to 2 different opening picks from 2 different facets of the map as well. Jarvis looking down through Square, switches to the air jets at the worst possible time, but it's really not going to matter. Big Shy will find the only kill in the round thus far, and will immediately fall off. Enham is in a 1 versus 4. It has been 80 seconds, and Enham's alone. They are flashed off the angle, have absolutely no idea where they are as they fall back into the armory office, but it's not going to happen. JMU just casually put 3 rounds consecutive on the board. Their attack looks unbeatable, and they will have 3 consecutive map points to force Skyscraper.
And for Butler, their defensive rounds, they have just been too stagnant to really slow down JMU. You had that instant kill by Jarvis and a Jonesy. I mean, I really can't fault him. He probably just wasn't expecting that Zofia to just insta-swing him like we saw in that round, and the nanosecond that JMU found that opening kill, everyone else just slowly coincide to get into the building and just try to find more of those picks as Butler are now scrambling to work a refrag, or at the very least, just fall back. Now seeing a reattempt here onto Bathroom and Tellers, this could be the final bell that tolls for Butler here, at least on border, as they did win Bang. So, if they do lose this map, at least we have Skyscraper on the drawing board, but for them, they'd probably want to close things out 2-0.
It would need to be, as I do quick math in my head, 5 of the next 6 rounds with a bare minimum start of 3 in a row. Not likely, but certainly possible. Again, I'll say it just as I did back on Bank. Butler went 7-0 in Series for a reason. I will give it to them. They did lose a map to JMU, one of the few teams they even dropped a map to, and without even dropping a series, even more dominant as just a showing. But an odd setup, fully impressing themselves on towards Armory and Archives, while defending Bathroom Tellers. Interesting decision as to their setup. Their defensive setup, in terms of operators, makes perfect sense. Where they're going with it, questionable.
Just trying to make sure that JMU don't get any of the map for free. Can't fault them for that, but we did see last time the site was in play that JMU just kind of ignored the top floor and just tried to hit the site as fast as they could, so might be the whole eggs into only one basket type situation again here for Butler. A second Razor Bloom will pop out, but it's not going to do any damage on a Jarvis. Just give info for the defense that there is someone over by that catwalk position to maybe, you know, acknowledge the roamers when they should be trying to fall back and if they need to actually play on those shields or not. Blind fire attempted here by Jarvis. Nothing to connect so far, and I believe he knows the player has now fallen back to that shield, so they'll try to break it with that frag grenade and now push off of that angle opened up by his nade. Funny enough, the soft explosivity working wonders for Jarvis as it nets him yet another opening gunfight.
You know, if that was planned, outstanding. If it wasn't, even better, just for comedic effect. And unfortunately, Big Shy just didn't see it. Apparently tunnel visioning in towards that room door, and the problem, again, for Butler is losing an opening duel. Jonesy already had to back away, considering they're on just under 20 HP, with Raikai gone as well. James Madison look infallible on the attacking side, not stopping whatsoever or for anything. Gravy 1v5 to keep them in the map.
lot of big obstacles left pardon here for the lone alibi. And Gravy missing out on a big opportunity. And the sled just looks right at him. JNU, the flawless round and the flawless second half to bring us to Skyscraper. I believe, do you believe in magic here, Dan? Because we might just see it happen depending on how map 3 goes.
I mean, considering the magic of the second half and the fact that Border's a defensive-sided map and was chosen by Butler, I believe I don't even have to believe in magic. We've already seen it. That's how good it looked for James Madison. The now question remains for them, what can they do to come back and bring back more energy into Skyscraper? Border looked great. The second half, at least, looked really good for them. But can they clear that into Skyscraper, of which is almost never played, period, much less in Collegiate?
I would definitely recommend maybe bring out the Azami more for this position because, especially on Border, she is very strong. Same thing applies for Skyscraper. And having somebody else with her alongside those key barriers, we saw a lot of isolated one-for-one gunfights going the way of JMU, especially last round when it was, big Shy to die by the hand of Jarvis because he was just on an island only having that shield to assist him. So if you have key barriers in the mix over by CCTV, no one from Catwalk can push in as aggressively to kill that 90 player, and now they have to directly confront that player over by the shield, or they have to deal with the Azami first and then kill the Thorn who's up above, which in general just wastes more time and resources and maybe gives you more options to take a gunfight and maybe win it rather than having your opponent start off the bat with a 5-on-4 advantage.
Well, it's each team picking up each other's map selection. The Dukes return onto Butler Bulldogs' spot of Border. We'll head to the least played map in competitive Rainbow Six Siege, and especially in the collegiate scene. Skyscraper on the horizon, the decider is required to determine who goes to LAN and who goes home. Butler take map 1, JMU take map 2, a third is required. Skyscraper on the horizon as we move to the least played map in competitive Siege. It's the unknown variable for now both teams. Can either pick it up, the winner goes to LAN. I'm Time to Light, still joined alongside me is fellow at Skyscraper. Can't say that very often in R6. You cast Challenger League, they play it all the time. But, collegiate, not so much.
Yeah, and playing it, but playing it well, that's up for debate, I have to admit.
Yeah, Challenger League teams, you guys suck.
Well, at least the, creativity on that map, it's a very dry cut map. You see the same extensions almost all the time. You've got someone with a shield over in like Shrine and then Drum, for example. Maybe a Kiba barrier there too if a zombie's actually coming in past the ban phase. And then that's basically it. You might flip it around depending on what site you're playing on. Where you see the most variety is probably like barbecue and kitchen, and that's mostly it because no one picks bedroom as a bomb site. It's really weak. So it's a lot of challenges that you tend to face when defending this map and also attacking it, especially if you're not well versed on it too.
Master Bedroom's the best ranked site to play if you have 3 brain cells and a 3 stack. If not, and you're solo queuing, don't touch it. Not even with a 39.5 foot pole. I personally am a big fan. It's really easy to hold. You just casually extend vertically into office. You're good to go. Play through the hatch and, what have you. You're in a great spot. But into Skyscraper. And without delaying all that much more, Skyscraper is a big wild card. Butler should be in a little bit of a better spot for the sole reason they're the higher seed. But in that same right, James Madison, you could also say, have the advantage because they just picked up game 2 of Border. Momentum being what it is, we'll see if that actually comes to fruition for them as our third map kicks underway. Attacking bans should probably go something along the lines of Azami Nook, maybe something in that general area. James Madison start on the defensive side and start with an Osa ban, picking up where they left off back on Border.
Osa is also very good on Skyscraper. She can be very helpful if you are a team that tends to struggle with that,
really?
top black position. Yeah, shocking, right? That and also almost any kind of clear that can lead over into Office, for example. I know you're being sarcastic, but it was like the straightforward yes. That's what you always want to go for there. Just try to really confuse the chat room. Rest of the vans look pretty normal as well. You've got Flores and Kaid as well. Kane was picked out on the rare occasion on both Border and Bank. Now it's going to be a non-factor for this map, and so is Mira, who has been banned every single map. I think her and Flores have been banned every time. Actually, no, Flores was
No.
not banned on map 1. That was Jacqueline Nook.
Correct. Yeah,
There we go.
and Flores was the reason I was sarcastically saying really, not your comments on.
Oh,
Those-
okay,
those
sorry.
were correct. Yeah, Flores is also a staple ban. I'm a little surprised that Nook and Azami made it through. I was expecting one or the other to be banned out by JMU, but honestly, JMU have been the ones to
Defenders,
play
protect your
both
bombs from
more
being
than they've
defused
been the
by
ones to
attackers.
contest against both. Also, by the way, Clash is being played. Last time I saw Clash, it was a throne room defense on Theme Park like 3 weeks ago in a different collegiate league because they play like this Miro Windows strat. I think I showed this to you at some point, but
I was there.
yeah,
passing
you
that.
were there. Yeah, it's been a little while since I've seen Clash. I don't know how I feel about it on Teen Karaoke. We'll see. TBD. I'll give you my thoughts when the round ends.
Well, when you have like 2 or 3 choke points max, if you have one person on Clash just solo focus on that
5
area,
seconds remaining.
I don't think that's really a bad idea. And you still have 2 other shields with some ADSs, so you're not just putting all of your, value into this one gamble play of a Clash. Nope, you're considering the options that Butler could go for on their attack, and you have something as a precautionary measure on every single facet of that attack. I do wonder, though, where Jarvis is going to start his defensive reign of terror. It looks like he's playing over towards, was that top left? That might have been the Clash running around. No, oh yeah, it actually was. And there's PK as well running around by Dragon. He finds the opening kill onto Big Shy, and Gravy gets a trade onto Shadows, but I think, once again, not having the Zofia around, it's probably a bigger issue than the Jaeger.
The Thatcher being on the board should clear out this bandit battery utility as well. Jarvis takes down the CCE shield at the correct time, looks to just walk over towards the display window, but should be cleared back up. And at this point, it's really just down to how long it takes Butler to clear out this roam. I do not believe the SP-SMG was able to take down that drone at long range, so still information available for Butler. But they only have 7 drones and 2 minutes to work with. Not the end of the world for them, but Big Shy falling early, a big power pick for Butler to pick up.
They just now entering the building, gathering some info as well. Jarvis returning the favor, though. An air jab is deployed, but it's only to make sure that Jarvis can't really swing past this Dragon doorway. He's still playing in Dragon proper without really a lot of, force pushing him away, especially with that Zofia gone as well. Those concussive blasts could really put away the Clash and maybe even find a kill one or two, depending on what angle you build up. But Jarvis just has so much free range to play off of unless someone can rotate around to shoot him in the back. But currently, that's not going to be on the drawing board here for Butler, as they're just trying to get control of Dragon and Shrine.
Jarvis flashed off the angle. Still just waiting, is safe with the shield in hand. Follow-up flash to really make sure they're thrown off. Somehow is not captured by the ADS, but there's still no concussion used to throw that out of position. Really no aggression whatsoever to throw that out of position, considering the concussion has been taken away. Jonesy, even past the Clash, is able to find one onto PK, so the aggression of the alibi taken off, but not before PK finds a triple. The rest of the team hasn't really had to do all that much. Havoc had fallen off the angle and hadn't even seen a player. Bluekey still has a Toxic Babe remaining, but there's only 40 seconds left. Butler need to aggress. They need to take some of this utility away, or at bare minimum, find a kill or two to work around, and with Enham taking some damage, no easy way to do so. I don't even know if they're going to survive this. They won't. They'll die to the Toxic Babe because of the CCE shield, and Jonesy's left alone in a 1v3.
Not too many options left for Jonesy as well. They've got info on this Nomad, and they have no utility whatsoever to help push back the Clash or really any other defender. In these final 10 to 15 seconds of the round, they'll try to get aggressive, maybe creep down through this drum doorway, but you've got both the Bandit and a player by T to have a crossfire on this one doorway. Again, the choke points just being so potent for the defensive side to work against the offense, granting JMU the round win off a very good cross-coordination between both PK and Jarvis by Shrine.
No real response there from Butler. This is reminiscent of the attacking side of JMU back on map 1, and honestly similar to that of map 2 as well, considering how dominant they both looked. or the defensive side of map 1, attacking side of map 2. Kind of mix those up. Nonetheless, still an applicable conversation where JMU looked decisive in their decision making, and they have strats set. With the Clash being selected, you knew they were going to play around it. Just the way they did so was such an odd position for Butler to deal with, and the fact that Big Shy was taken off the board so early, he really just did not have anything to deal with the Clash. And, well, now it's across Office, and unsurprisingly so, Office usually the secondary site for most teams if they don't immediately go down to barbecue in the kitchen. Because, as you said, nobody likes to play Master, even though it's honestly a fairly good site. What do you do here if you're on the JMU defense? They don't have a bandit this time around. I have to say I'm a little surprised about that.
Pretty much nothing to stop those walls from being opened up, considering the fact that there is a Thatcher for Enham. So those mute jammers, depending on where they're placed, it just might not matter. They might be used more or less just for drone denial. So I can imagine for Butler, if they acknowledge that, they want to rotate at a fast time, they're going to be able to get this office wall opened up, but still be able to do probably a T/Geisha overclear, heading into both, you know, Drum and Shrine, the 2 points of the map I mentioned earlier before we even got into Skyscraper, because how often you can see an attacking team win around just having those 2 positions as control for their team. Unfortunately for Gravy and Jonesy, though, Jarvis has their number, and with a quick run out with the help of that MPX, scores the side of JMU 2 opening kills for free.
It's openings again JMU's way, and at this point, Butler just do not have a response to the continued aggression of James Madison. The drum, by the way, is open for Jarvis to play an alarmingly long angle across that top side catwalk, still trying to aggress on the backside of Terrace as well. This is such an odd position for Butler to be in. They're relying on that hard breachability of the ace, and Enham almost falling probably would have ended the round right then and there. Luckily, does not, at least not early enough. Butler still in this, but narrowly.
Saying still, they might be able to get this wall opened up, but they are so low on players for that execute. They would really have to count their lucky stars if they can find a couple of 1-for-1 isolations and still maybe equalize this position into a 3-on-3, or maybe that 3-on-2 if things go even better than previously anticipated. The case picked up now by the Zofia across the map as Raikai tries to go in for a swing on that previously opened up wall. And for Enham, he's got a shield to try to disregard to maybe work that pick against the mute playing behind it currently. Blue Key toss out a C4, doesn't connect, but so far he's still safe behind that shield despite Enham looking to really thread the needle and kill this guy, but he is just so close and so far away all at the same time.
How in the world does he not die there? That's definitely his outline. I'm not wrong on that one, unless for some reason he's hiding under that bar. He's not, but is still alive. Big Shy finds a return, so it's a 4v3. Blue Key's still on 20 HP after that engagement across with Enham. So by no means is this JMU's definitive round, but so much utility is still available for this attack, and they're trying to aggress, and quickly so. Blue Key was waiting under that bar position, but here comes the aggression from Butler. They want to aggress, and quickly so, they're going to have the opportunity to do so. 30 seconds, but Butler need to go.
Blue Key still playing close with an SMG-11 and shotgun combination, but so low in HP, it's a big game of cat and mouse, and wow, the Thermite just hops in, a good kill, found with that 5.56, but again, no diffuser in the pocket of any attacker still alive, leads things desperate now for Butler as they still need to find 3 kills with only 8 seconds to go. Shooting out that Prisma gathers tons of info for JMU, Raikai dropped to the floor, and now it's just Enham with no time left to spare. JMU, 2 in a row on map 3, it's looking good for him so far.
Where in the world was the diffuser, and why did Butler not have it in their hands? Was it dropped on the outside of, like, Office?
I think Jonesy died with it in his pocket because he was on Ace, and then
Big Shy picked it up.
Yep, exactly. Big Shy had to pick it up, and he was still across the map lurking as Zoe, so he couldn't get there in time.
That's such a weird round for Butler. It was a very good decision to honestly just send Raikai in, waste no time, just honestly hold W. But the fact that it didn't work quickly enough and that all 3 players weren't together, they didn't have that flexibility as a team. And now to Barbecue Kitchen. JMU with back-to-back defensive rounds on Skyscraper to open things up. Again, they are competing against the #1 seed overall and the #1 seed in their conference, of whom took them out in the regular season to put them down to 3rd place. A very odd position for Butler to be in, considering they were the favorites walking in. By the way, a quick note back to that regular season match. If JMU picked up either map 1 or 3, they actually would have had a 3-way tie for first place, with Kettering, Butler, and JMU all circling with wins against one another.
JMU looking to keep the good vibes going here on their defensive half, while Butler haven't found a response yet to deal with that just, I guess, unrivaled aggression here for JMU on their defensive half. I'm a little shocked that with Butler understanding the importance of the Nook when they banned it all the way back on Bank, the lack of her on the map of Skyscraper, because how important she can be to establish that lurk on the first floor, maybe find a kill or two with those grenades, and then creep up some of those staircases just to have an external position you can attack from for Butler. Because again, when you look at all those choke points, if JMU just have to focus on both Drum and the side of Shrine, then they're going to be pretty much in an easy position with a couple crossfires in 2 straight funnels for the offense. But if you have that Nook available to go somewhere else, it just leads you to more opportunities to maybe clutch up and go big.
The clutch has to be there for Butler earlier rather than later. And they just haven't had that immediate clutch potential per player. Enham found, kill in the previous round. We also saw similar situations in round 1. But JMU have had that earlier in rounds. Jonesy dies through the shield. That nade went to the far side of the shield, so the ADS didn't pick it up, and it landed far enough around it to where they pick up the kill early. Looking for a follow-up, it's Jonesy with a double. There's that clutch potential, and it doesn't have to be late in rounds. Clutches don't always come in the last 20 seconds. They can arise sooner, as I mentioned, rather than later.
Still, Jonesy alive to maybe get that vertical down could be huge to force back some of those anchors on the bomb site. Other than that, though, Butler need to keep consistent on that first floor clear as well. They have a couple of attackers over in that position too. I believe both Raikai and maybe it's actually Big Shy in that first floor, not Gravy. He's the one to actually assist the sledge up above, and there goes that vertical I mentioned earlier. But if they want to have that hatch as an option too, they would need to have the ace of Raikai to rotate over, which would cost a lot of seconds off the timer here for Butler.
Just something they cannot afford. It's only a 4v3, as I say that. Now a 3v2.
No.
C4... No, it's the EDD! That's a doorway you can put an EDD on? On today's episode of I Didn't Know That, and I'm probably supposed to. Surprising, as Blue Key's able to pick up that kill, but this is just easier to come back from now for JMU. As the numbers start to dwindle for the Butler side, they do even more for JMU. The drop through the hatch, but Raikai's safe for the time being. They swing a second time straight to their demise. Blue Key will find the first, being swung from behind, but the information's there, and Big Shy has the freedom to get aggressive. Butler will pick up their first round on the attacking side of Skyscraper, but is it too little too late?
There's that lurk factor as well. I definitely do not think it's really too late. We see this map being pretty defender favored for the most part, so having that 2-to-1 split and just keeping things consistent on that tertiary site pick is enough to ask for. Maybe finding a round win potentially on one karaoke or office bomb site could be a good thing as well for Butler, but if they get a 2-to-4 split, it's not going to be the end of the world. However, I would hope for them to still continue that lurk effect that we saw done by Gravy. He walked down black stairs to make sure not everyone's just funneling in from either that hatch drop or the, back doorway near supply, just so there's, a crossfire that could maybe be built up there favoring Butler. Ended up having them in that 2v1 pincer maneuver, guaranteeing they'd secure that round win, which Butler desperately needed to make sure they don't get 3-0'd.
Desperation for Butler was there, but I suppose desperation forced them into power positions, so kills were found, as were the round. A Montaigne is being prepped, and will actually be locked in by Enham. This is a new one for Butler. This is the first shield operator they will bring in this series. JMU has brought both the Montaigne and Clash on separate occasions and separate sides of maps, including separate maps if you want to continue to condense that conversation. But something different from Butler. Maybe exactly what they need, considering Tea and Karaoke wasn't their best.
Only other op they've brought that's close to that is an Osa, but that isn't really the same as, you know, a Montane and Clash like you had mentioned, so I'd kind of agree more with you that we haven't really seen something like this brought up by Butler more specifically. But one thing we have seen a lot by them is the Ying, and with no Warden here for JMU on their lineup, that could help make a lot of space too. Maybe allow the Montane to creep in, make a bit more coverage for that planter, and have a post-plant position here for Butler. It seems like they want to attack in from that black position. That way the Montane can just have instant access to the bomb site, so long as they can destroy that deployable shield.
I mean, they've destroyed the deployable shield before. I do believe Jonesy has just walked into a frost mat and has now died to PK in the frost mat. That's it's a little unfortunate there for Jonesy. Enham with the Montane will look to aggress across. They cannot drop that shield early enough, but the Ace Selma past the shoulder of Enham will do so later on. There is a return in case taken care of, so their transgressions onto Jonesy have been returned upon. But it's still a 4v4, and with the Montane still alive, they're still in a fairly good position on the attacking side.
Only one more Toxic Babe now. It'd be this one gadget and maybe the Nitro Cell to stop that Montane, and it's popped out while the rest of the Toxic Clouds are still formed up here. Blue Key not having any utility, probably just has to fall back, and he can't even rotate into Geisha. He has to play in Karaoke proper just to keep this position going for JMU, especially since there's no one playing over by Black Stairs for the defensive side.
Odd positions for the defensive side, considering how much Butler is prepped on this side of the map. Bluekey has seen that Montane cross their line of sight, tries to aggress across onto the Ace, second player in, but is unsuccessful in doing so. The aggression at the Black Stairs has been heard, but Raikai is down. The kill doesn't fully come through, and unfortunately Bluekey looks the wrong way. Could have found the finish, but is unable to do so. A 2v2 on a technicality, but Raikai can be retrieved, and the Montane is still alive. Butler with the advantage, as now their man is retrieved and the C4 is shot out of position. They wouldn't have found anything anyway.
Gravy there on the swing, attempting to find yet another on this round, but no, they both line up for Jarvis. He downs the second one. Gravy on the floor. It's just Enham now in 1 versus 2, trying to pick up his down teammate, goes for the pistol, and Jarvis, the 3K. JMU hold on and deny any sort of equalizer for Butler.
But Butler were in such a good position, and they just over-aggress in situations they didn't have to. JMU continue to hold strong on the defensive side. T and Karaoke once more goes their way. They'll head back to Exhibition Office, of which was a fairly good round for them. Not as decisive as I think they would have liked, but it was still well put together. They forced Butler to panic in the final seconds of the round. They didn't even have the diffusers. They did not aggress as a squad. And now as they bring in a carbon copy defensive setup, I like the position they're in. It's not something different, but it's something that's already worked.
And as well for Butler, it's just the bigger concern of can they be reactive to if JMU are going to get aggressive and not just play those default spots, because a major way that they won Office was by just having Jarvis kill 2 people off the rip. I believe that was both Jonesy and then potentially Gravy, as Enham was also on the Thatcher back in round number 2. The case was in no man's land, so Big Shy had to pick that back up and was still trying to do his job as the lurker of that round, losing the case in no man's land. And at that point, Butler just didn't have enough resources to recover that diffuser, nor find any other kills along that ride. So for Butler, they need to keep their bodies up just to make sure they can do their regular jobs before going guns blazing.
But guns blazing is so fun.
Not when you're the one getting a gun down.
You make a fair point. Brief note, by the way, courtesy of Twitch chat, a player from Ferris State has confirmed that Kettering has beaten the Southern Missouri squad. So, Kettering's going to land. Congratulations to the squad from Michigan. They will be in Philly in 2 weekends' time, playing for the grand finals. Winner of this will play them, so it is going to be an East 2 conference matchup there.
Definitely looking forward to seeing Bucka again. I guess the annual anniversary between himself and me, in terms of seeing each other in person. That'll definitely be fun going down and through December. But need to figure out who's going to actually join Bucka and co. from this last map on Skyscraper. So far, JMU look to be the main leaders of the pact, but they almost lose PK off the bat from a good swing by Gravy, expecting that aggression from the player over towards Catwalk. And now Lucy able to fall away, but losing a lot of HP is definitely worse for wear, but at least they didn't die by the hand of that Nomad, so he'll have to be a bit more precautionary just to make sure there is no sign of defenders trying to look into take another fight, which PK might just do so by the top of Shrine, walking up that dragon staircase and looking to get a bit closer against the Nomad.
Gravy's so close. The aggression there. PK, it's swing or be swung. They both actually die. The trade is there, as is the kill from Raikai around from the office balcony. Butler now with control, and a 4v3 as they need to pick up this site and force JMU onto a site they have lost. Havoc could get aggressive around that far balk, but they don't want to, at least not early enough. Havoc does do so and finds a kill, but there's a return from Jonesy. A 1v2 from Havoc. The sound cue on towards the stairs as the Banshee's being popped, but it's a fake. As they back away, the diffuser needs to be retrieved, and there's 40 seconds for Butler to consolidate and look to secure the round.
We're trying to pick up that diffuser as well. Can't quite tell if it's actually on the exterior or interior of that window, but a drone, I believe someone was on that who's currently dead, giving info as to where Havoc is playing. He'll now have to fully rotate, but not going to completely give up this position just yet. It might just be a bait, looking to maybe allow Butler to recover that diffuser and then consolidate back in the bomb site. Could be the right call, but it's such a big gamble. He's got plenty of info, though, both that audio hop-in and the prox alarm. Big side, looking to maybe stick that defuse, but there's the lineup by Havoc. 6 seconds to go. Raikai's got to go for the gunfight, and Havoc just hides in the closet. 1 second to go, and Raikai cannot find the Wamai, just playing hide and seek. JMU, a massive win, and an even more massive clutch for the Wamai.
I have to say, it's also kind of a blunder from Butler. A 4v1, just giving individual 1v1s. Jonesy the first, Havoc to swing on across. I believe Enham was actually the first, Jonesy the second. But it's still, why? Play around what you know. Drones were available. All of the drones for both of the players alive between both Raikai and Big Shy were on the board, and they had 45 seconds to work with. That's a situation in which you look at and say, very well done to Havoc, but should not have even been given the opportunity to pick up that push.
Well, all comes down to, I guess the term would maybe horseshoes and hand grenades in terms of how close the situation could get that actually matters. That situation, sure, close for Butler, but not able to close things out, not having enough proper info as to where Havoc went when he went past that drone, destroyed it, and crept his way down towards that staircase. And unfortunately for Zofia, nerves were getting to them, couldn't move over to the natural cover in time, and it costed them the round completely. JMU now up 4. Butler would need to win this tertiary bomb site to make it that 2-4 split, which again, wouldn't be horrible, but again, the way they've been losing these rounds, that's been the biggest concern of mine, not just the bomb sites they've been played on.
So now, my vote is the fact that Butler's just casually going to go down 4-2, and they lost that round specifically so they could go down 4-2, because they were tied 3-3 at the halftime last map, and then they got absolutely dumpstered in the second half. This time, they want to go down 4-2 just as they did in map 1, so they can win it in OT. It's just 4D chess from the Butler Bulldogs. That's why they're trying what they are, and the reason they're only picking up tertiary bomb sites.
Attackers recovered the diffuser.
Surely that must be the reason why. Nothing else overly specific for them. Butler, their lineup doesn't look all too different from the last time Barbecue was in play. I think there might be a small difference by JMU, but not necessarily. I think the only difference now is Havoc is on the pulse, but I feel like they at least attempted to bring him out at some point during this game, but I digress. Jonesy will be the first, front line here for Butler. Thankfully, he didn't die, though, as if your sledge has gone for this attack, then you might be pretty out of luck when trying to work for that verticality, especially since you have Big Shy with no breaching charges.
Hello.
There's Jonesy with the double kill. Good response by the sledge, having backup by Gravy as well. So sure, the Zofia dies, but 2, definitely a greater number than 1.
Absolute 200 IQ from a T2 Rainbow Six Siege caster. 2 is indeed greater than 1.
There you go. Took a lot of experience to figure that one out, I'll be honest.
Well, Butler will be telling you that 4 is greater than 3. as they have the man advantage. I'm sorry, I just had to let that one sink in for a second. JMU's defense just has to consolidate, and they have done so in a fairly decent fashion. Havoc is the only one with a C4 remaining. Actually, Blue Key had a C4 pre-prepped. It was sitting above their head, and the comm is there as Jonesy walks straight into it. JMU find that equalization as 3 equals 3. And they're able to start to bring things back and try and gain an advantage in their own right.
And there's no hard breach for the back wall. It's just the hatch. That's the only avenue that Butler could maybe use, unless someone rotates back down to that black staircase. But I think for JMU, they might be expecting some sort of late round transition here. There goes Enham from the wave stairs to try to work a pick on the guy towards Barbecue, but just not able to find enough shots to confirm it. Only a down on the Havoc, but that still creates enough space for the Thatcher to walk in, but he's got no clue about Shadow's position. There's Raikai for one, but the cleanup is there for Butler, and there's that 2-4 split we were talking about, but again, it's just a matter of how the rounds were won by JMU that are a bigger concern, but as well, moving on to their attacking half, if they have the favor returned on them, that could be a major concern.
Defense for Butler, you'd expect to be there. At a bare minimum, has to exist. Remember, they went down 4-2 in map 1, but they also started off on the defensive side there and were able to flip to the attack and gain the advantage back the other way that time around. It really came down to the attack being theirs on round 15 for them to pick up the map itself. So is it the attack that now favors James Madison? It seemingly was back on map number 1, but map 2 not so much the case. It was really the defensive prowess that came to fruition there. I don't know what to tell you, John. I don't even know what to predict. I really want to stick with my original prediction of Butler picking this one up because I believe in comebacks, mainly for storylines. But JMU have looked so decisive on their attacking sides. You never really know.
Never know what they're going to want to accomplish with that Ying as well. Sure, Enham is on the ward and the hard counter for that operator. That is the only major counter, though. So if they can isolate and kill Enham, it's going to be free real estate here for Jarvis in this round. So good thing to look at to see where Enham is playing and if he's actually in a good position to maybe stop those Candelas from being a real threat against the defensive hold of Butler. As JMU look to keep things simple for this offensive attack, they want to get this back wall opened up as soon as humanly possible, and Shadows might look to try to find a grenade kill underneath, if not just breaking the utility that's over on that back wall, despite them having only a mute jammer to worry about when they have EMPs. So looks like Shadows will realize that and will just save his grenades for later. A good call.
Nades there for lethality, but the wall already open, and Butler, as we mentioned in the first half, can't really do anything to contest it. Thatcher still available, Bandit tricking your best bet, but even then it's not a security, and the nades from below could have come through. They didn't really have to. After the information was there, it was just a mute jammer. Now it's down to JMU's attack. They've gotten the wall open. They have an avenue of attack. Do they aggress, and do they have the manpower to push it through? The pincer maneuver could come through from display, as that window is now opened via a breach charge on the castle barricade. So they have to make sure that Butler's looking both ways at the same time before they aggress, but they also need to make sure they can find lines of sight onto opponents with information. And with Big Shy picking up the opener and Jarvis falling, that's a way to do so for the Butler side to consolidate and shut down James Madison's aggression.
And now it doesn't matter where the Warden's playing at, because that was the Ying who's the opening death, and PK
no.
working for Vertical just gets shot in the side by Gravy. Massive play coming out by Gravy as well in that position, but the plant is still being attempted, but a big play is found by Big Shy. Once again, the SMG rattling out in the background as Blue Key is eliminated trying to play for that objective, and Gravy working back up above. Big Shy with another, just playing these long-range angles and somehow winning them with that SMG-11, leaving just Havoc now in a 1v4. We've seen him clutch before, but now on the attacking half, it seems futile against Butler, and it might just be a pseudo timeout attempted by JMU just to think things through.
Yeah, Havoc's pulled off a 1v4 before. Just, do it again. Easy. Not a difficult feat by any means.
Yeah,
it's not actually going to happen. The reason Havoc's running towards the corner of the map is because JMU's having a conversation in comms right now. I like the decision. don't try and send yourself into a round. Take the time without needing your actual timeout. And, you know, for some style points, try and land some lineup EMPs. You can't put recharges onto any unbreachable surfaces, so he won't be able to do that to maybe blow himself up. But it's still a round for Butler. And the kills went Big Shy's way. The aggression was there with the SMG-11, the long angles were held, and James Madison just was not ready for it, considering the whereabouts of the rest of Butler. They were trying to consolidate around that close corner bar, or even across towards the backside of office, and they just didn't. It was really the definitive gunfire that led to their demise, and Butler pick up the opener, the all-important one, to rather than go down 3 rounds, just bring it back to within 1.
And as well for Butler, sure, they were also technically given like a pseudo timeout, but they didn't do anything wrong that round, so they don't have much to discuss going into the new half. If they were maybe still on the attack, then it would be a little more favorable, but that's if they actually were. So they're just looking to pick a new bomb site and maybe expect a little bit more utility popped out by JMU. They, funny enough, don't select the Warden once again, despite knowing that JMU brought out a Ying earlier, but it seems for them that it hasn't been a threat so far, as JMU this round are not opting to do so, but they still have a good chunk of utility. Only issue is that they do have a lack of grenades, so they might need to rely on just breaking some of those shields more instead of finding kills, unless PK can just use his explosive lifelines, but now they have no grenades. And just might not need them. Just kidding. Jarvis goes in the sledge. And a blitz pick as well by Blue Key. Maybe they're going to rush top black perhaps and just try to get the plant down from there. That could be a potential option maybe with the help of that blitz.
JMU rushing? No, they haven't done that before, have they? Oh wait, yeah, it's been like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, I just, you know,
on every map.
Yeah, they just do it all the time. Totally, completely forgot and wasn't doing that for comedic effect. JMU, honestly, I'd like a rush, but they'd have to do so quickly and quietly enough to where Butler would not be expecting it. Here comes the blitz, just aggressively walking through the main hallway and wasting no time, but they walk straight into Raikai, who shoots the feed out of Blue Key and the face off of PK. The opener, plural, goes the way of Butler. A return is there for Jarvis, but they take just too much damage to sustain through multiple fights, and Jonesy makes sure that is a fact as they find a follow-up. 3v2, JMU are still in this one, but easier said than done as they still have 3 players to deal with on this defensive side.
Not gonna lie, a huge play as well to reinforce that rotate, to not give an easy access way for JMU if they're gonna rush. Again, we've seen this play consistently by them, so making sure that they're gonna have to fight a little bit more to get inside of the bomb site and get that diffuser down was definitely not a bad idea on paper for Butler, and in execution, it worked just as well. But things are still on even footing here for JMU despite that early loss of life. They convert in the mid-round and now put us in a 2v2, 2 separate players relatively low in HP, but maybe Shadows and Havoc just simply having more utility to throw at the eyes of Butler, more specifically those flash grenades, could be something to help them alleviate some of that pressure the defense are currently holding against them.
Very well-timed Toxic Babe, making sure there cannot be aggression off the back of those 2 flashbangs thrown through. Enham still knows the diffuser's down on the far side, and Gravy taking Shadows out of contention leaves it just down to Havoc, whose whereabouts are most certainly known by the defensive side. Havoc walks straight through the door, needs to look through the opposing door on the Shrine side, but actually makes it out alive. Still wants to aggress on the backside of the bomb chassis, but is still worried about 2 completely different angles at the exact same time. Looks for the first shot onto Enham, but Enham, faster on the trigger, with a faster fire rate, is able to find the final kill required and give Butler a follow-up round to tie us up at 4 apiece.
And those shields were just Butler's lifeline for that round. We saw how much the alibi of Gravy and the smoke of Enham were just clinging onto those for natural cover. That and the bomb chassis as well for the smoke, able to make sure that they're not going to be as vulnerable to those pincer attacks that JMU were setting up. They had a guy over by Geisha to maybe have a long angle against the guy in T-Room, and again, that person still by the black single door to again try to creep in the bomb site and just push back the smoke and maybe kill them all together. But not only having the natural cover of the bomb chassis and that shield, but having the other deployable stacked up with the alibi over in a drum that can still help pinpoint the pressure areas that JMU are trying to, force in that position and still win those 1-for-1s because you have info and a better position altogether to take those gunfights.
Positioning, more often than not, can become everything for a defensive side. And the note at this point for Butler is they were in a better position in the previous round to shut down James Madison's attack. It was very well put together. The decision was good, the call was good, the execution wasn't bad, but it just wasn't good enough. They even pushed straight onto the correct player. Raikai honestly probably wasn't ready for it, but heard the blitz, and as soon as they did, looked straight at the feet as they aggressed forward. Blitz's overall effective range of that shield flash was taken away a little bit of time ago, so the nerf onto the blitz, hurting a little bit later on, and it leads to the Butler win. That's how they bring things back. That's really how they needed to do so, in a decisive way and a clean finish to the round. Now, aggression again for the JMU attack, but this time it's onto the bottom floor defense as Barbecue Kitchen is occupied.
Exothermic to detonate. Havoc looking to take a gunfight on this upside down rappel, but so far no one to open up to the F90 just yet. So a bit of a stalemate now for JMU as they're gathering more info and looking to find a way to actually get in the building to force back these roamers on the top floor. Good kill by Enham, now finding two with that AUG, making quick work of both Jarvis and PK. Two consistent headshots in Raikai. Wow, what an angle with that Uzi as well. Eradicates Havoc from the equation, and Gravy joins in on the fun too. Blue Key is shut down, and now it's just Shadows left to stand in a 1v4 as he finds one kill onto the Jaeger, but still, it's an ace clutch to be required by this man to make sure Butler don't find a 3-round flawless sweep on their second half of their defense.
And that would give Butler the lead, by the way, giving them at bare minimum redundancy. They'd have to pick up one of the following 3 rounds to guarantee OT. The issue, Butler starts on the attack in overtime, certainly not the advantageous side considering the previous 8, soon to become 9 rounds. But Shadows still has to clutch. 70 seconds, certainly a possibility in a 1v4, looks at the first, but immediately has their head ripped from the rest of their body, courtesy of Jonesy's UMP-45, the .45 ACP shot, clean shot at that, and Butler take the lead for the first time on Skyscraper.
Enham just being him apparently for that last round, opening things up with
I
another
hate you.
2K. Someone in chat said it. I feel like I had to do them some credit.
I saw it earlier.
Had to give Enham some credit there where credit is due. So for Butler, incredible round, and a one that you most certainly needed to make sure JMU did not get that man advantage, and that you don't follow the, I don't know what to call it, I guess the paradox of the 4-2, 4-2 split. Because if that were to happen overtime, if you have one team just get that defensive half, that could be the potential difference maker between you making it to Philly and just staying home with only that 3rd to 4th place winning prize pool. So good on Butler to win that tertiary bomb site pick. And now for JMU, they're looking to straggle away and find some sort of difference maker, which might be off the back of that lurk presence here by PK now in the Nook. We saw how effective Gravy was playing on that first floor to make sure no one could get any kind of positioning down in that position, but besides that, the rest of the attacking strat also didn't work out too well by JMU either, depending on how well that play worked on the first floor or not.
Gotta credit where credit's due, by the way. It's 1x Morales. Or 1 Morales with the O is replaced by an X. That's the Twitch username of the person you stole the him joke from.
Yep. Thank you.
I just controlled F and him and popped up. Thank you very much. Control F. Love that shortcut, by the way. Anywho, outstanding joke. Love the execution. Very well done. But JMU need now execution on their attack, and it needs to take execution to a whole new level, because even with proper execution, or as close as you can come to it, as they had around T and Karaoke, they've still been shut down. Office was shut down last time around. We do see the selection of that mute, and it's denied once more by the Thatcher. 1 EMP required, not the end of the world by any means, and they quickly open up the main wall. A follow-up, maybe some aggression for this attacking side. They want to, but, Mute on the far side actually still looking to get aggressive. Last time he played here, it was Big Shy to show up as the hero. A 3K in that round, yet to find a kill since in the previous 2. Looking to step up once more.
Saw PK a second ago, looking over by the terrace side of the map. seems like that could maybe give a good amount of pressure taken off the shoulders of these people trying to enter the bomb site. There's a smoke grenade and Blue Key just waltzes right in. The Candles to follow suit, and here comes the execute now by JMU, and nobody's here to stop it. They've got zero idea about this. There's Jarvis and PK to coincide, and now you've got this 5-on-3, 5-on-2 post-plant position, perfectly coordinated and perfectly developed by the offensive side to really put this noose around the neck of Butler. They've got no better options here except just hoping they can take a couple one-for-ones, maybe hop outside the map and maybe just put things in that 4 versus 2, but it's such a tricky situation to get yourself out of Jarvis. That long angle with the LMG, a perfect cutoff angle to cover it at the diffuser and make sure no one can cross past that display case, but Gravy does just that. He finds one kill, but he's got to look to his right. There's someone in the bomb site next to him, but it doesn't matter. Havoc's the one to get the final kill for the count. That would have been a really goofy kill cam if I've ever seen one, but still, it's the round going the way of JMU as the Ying and Nook play works perfectly.
The VIP combination in that round as well was Jarvis and Blue Key. Blue Key for 2 reasons. Number 1, the thermite to open up the wall. Yeah, that was fairly easy. You had that Thatcher. But the smokes on the rotate alongside the Ying as they aggressed, the Ying was holding down the display window with the rest of the team looking in from the main breach. That long angle held across was such a good position for that attacking side of James Madison that Butler just could not aggress. If they did, even while the plant was going down and they knew it, they would have fallen from one of 3 separate angles, and that just was not good enough. They had to play retake, and they could not, considering those positions they had relinquished prior. Very well put together and very well thought out from James Madison. Considering the previous defense put forward by Butler, it really relied on that display hallway / topside aggression with a breach. That really wasn't even an option this time around. The flexibility of James Madison comes back to bite Butler once more. They'll go back to Exhibition Office rather than Tea and Karaoke, looking to pick up their primary site for the second of 3 attempts.
If they're able to have someone playing underneath for plant denial, and if they have Warden be a bit more proactive about that office breach, then this is not the worst idea for Butler. And on top of that, it's probably better they go back to this bomb site, maybe win it, and then go Tea and Karaoke to get a 7-5 victory, then maybe try to jiggle around going into, Barbecue, because that site has been significantly more challenging for pretty much any player on this map. Sure, Butler did win it earlier, but it's still a bomb site where you can find a lot more weaknesses against the defenders. So it might just be a bigger aspect of just comfort when going to office in comparison to Tea Room, just because Butlers might prefer this site more than the opposing one of Barbecue, for example. And then they still have to go to Tea next round, most likely.
Question is, do they just go Tea or do they go back to Barbecue? Because Tea was close, Barbecue, not so much. Maybe that's the reason they're going Exhibition Office. They feel more confident here than they do Tea and Karaoke, and then they feel more confident on Barbecue than they do Tea and Karaoke as well. Odd site selections for Butler. We'll see if that actually does come to fruition, assuming they win on this site. Actually, even if they don't, we'd still technically get an answer to our question. Nonetheless, the solution has to be there sooner rather than later. Why did JMU switch up their setup? The only reason I can deduce is Big Shy has switched from the Mute to the Warden, understanding the Mute really wasn't finding all that much, so the Thatcher not required. Blue Key is back on that Thermite, but Jarvis now on the Jackal, Shadows on a Twitch, and Havoc on a Gridlock. Weird.
Definitely looking at more of a roam clear than just trying to hit the site as fast as possible. Might be the bigger reason why they want to have flank watch and also a better info gatherer of that Ayana and Jackal combination. But eventually they're still going to want to tip their toes over into maybe the single wall leading in a house, or still getting that office wall opened up, since they still have enough utility to get either one of those walls opened up. It's just going to be a little more of a timely manner, since they have to deal with this extension first and foremost. JMU not all too comfortable with hopping into that double window. They'll try to rotate around, but in the background, Gravy nets a kill onto that previously mentioned Jackal of Jarvis. Now that main info op is down, and Butler, they're going to be able to sit a little more pretty on this extension, because they're just not going to be forced away as much as they would be with those Inox scanners in effect.
That information just won't be there for James Madison, and it's something they have to be wary of now. Can they clear out the roam? A big prevalent part of a Jackal-centric roam clear is the information. They just don't have that at this point. Nade is prepped. Gravy should have heard that, mainly because I did, and my headphones aren't even turned up all the way. Nade comes through, Gravy's forced to back away, but is actually shot from the main desk at reception. Shadows finds the kill, is able to pick off the roaming alibi, and Butler lose that man advantage. It's brought back now by JMU.
Swing attempted here by PK just shortly, waiting on confirmation if the guy is still over in drum, and that will be most definitely accepted by JMU, but they're not able to pinpoint him just yet to actually find that frag. And Nade is tossed out here, but the crossfire with the help of Big Shy eradicates PK. Shadow still kills Enham though, so a bit of map control still established here by JMU Pardon, but it's even footing for Butler, and they still have loads of denial, but a major kill is collected by Havoc, now forcing away the rest of Butler. JMU as well, another kill collected. Blue Key up the house stairs, finds the Warden, and now it's just Raikai left to stand. A 1vx holding everything back against match point, but he can't do it. Havoc the long angle. JMU take the lead. They only need one more round, and they send themselves to Philadelphia.
And Butler call a tactical timeout. They need to slow things down. They cannot afford to give away this round for two separate reasons. Number one, this is a $625 round. If Butler win it, we go to OT and they fight once more. If JMU do, they go to Philly and guarantee themselves at a bare minimum $1,250. Loser, that being Butler in this situation, would only gain $625. Not the greatest position for them to be in. And now they'll go tea and karaoke. This is where I have a gripe. You, instead of going tea and karaoke in the previous round, go back to a site in which you had just lost definitively, albeit with a separate operator composition, but JMU had proven that they are a flexible team. Instead, you go back to the same site, rather than going to a site you had already won fairly cleanly without much risk prior. And it wasn't even for the reason that you wanted to save over the final round towards Kitchen Barbecue, of which at the time was locked. I'm not a fan of Butler's site rotation to the previous 2 or 3 rounds.
It's probably the thought process of it's a site that's still fresh in your mind because you just played it, and JMU did not change their attacking style every single time that site was in play up until last round. So all things considered, you don't really need a tack timeout for that, nor do you want to go somewhere like Teen Karaoke where they're probably not going to do a blitz rush trap because that didn't work out for them whatsoever. It's just the fear of the unknown. That is probably what swayed Butler's options to prefer offices before going back to Teen Karaoke. And like I mentioned, whether that round's going to be a win or not on the 11th, they are eventually going to go back to Teen Karaoke. And now their timeout concluded. They're ready to hop back into the prep phase to see what they can do better to make sure JMU just do not continue to be such this dominating threat in the mid and late round. Because the early round, it's been pretty back and forth, but when JMU are truly able to set up, clear out those power points on the map, and still have time to gather info, that's when they become a real menace.
Is it the PowerPoint specifically, or can they clear out Word documents and Excel spreadsheets as well?
Well, it depends on how well versed they are in the rest of the wild west of the internet, I guess. See how many YouTube videos they've looked up to actually know how to use sheets properly. Wouldn't be the first time I've done it.
Hey, Google searches are not the worst thing in the world. Butler now,
Definitely not.
1 round to go to OT or to send JMU to Philadelphia. JMU's attack will have to flex for a tea and karaoke defense, that of the Butler Bulldogs. A brief reminder, Butler will start on the attacking side in OT. They had lost the coin flip, so James Madison chose the defensive side. Not the greatest position for them to be in. That or Butler won the coin flip and decided to start on the attacking side of both regulation and OT. Either way, not a great position for them considering how our splits have gone, that being predominantly defender favored. It has thus far in the second half been 3-2 defense, and in the first half it was 4-2 to JMU's defensive side, just the same.
Everything on the line here for Butler. The chance to play against Kettering once again and see if they can beat them in that LAN environment, or if JMU, the underdogs against the regular dogs, can actually find this win on Skyscraper. Fitting enough, I think someone in chat mentioned how like those top 3 teams have all like dog logos / like names, so it's just gonna make our lives a lot more challenging. But moving on to the round itself now, I'm sure they don't really care about their logos for the time being. They're just focused on winning the rounds at the end of the day. JMU starting with an office over clear, forcing back those roamers as fast as they can to once again just get those positions of Shrine and also Drum. Nothing really much else to speak of as of right now, since JMU are still in the droning phase of their attacking round.
On a technicality, the person who said that's from Ferris State, and Ferris State's mascot is the Bulldog as well. So Ferris State lost to Southern Miss in the round of 16. That's Southern Miss moving to the semis, and then, so on and so forth. A bunch of Bulldogs have been successful thus far, all out of East 2. Nonetheless, Gravy picking up the opener. That's exactly what Butler need. An opening duel in their favor. Attempt from Big Shy onto a drone is unsuccessful, but Gravy has nobody else to contend with on the bottom floor. That's a really good start to remove any semblance of a possibility for a pincer maneuver for JMU, and Butler feeling a little bit more confident and comfortable on the defensive side. Comfortability can lead to consistency, and they need to consistently pick up kills in this final round of regulation.
Also making sure they keep control of Geisha as well. We saw that as a focal point for JMU last time the site was in play, and it almost netted them a kill, if not for the fact there was a shield by Drum to make sure the player in that area had loads of natural coverage. This time it's kind of flipped around in terms of that script, as now Jarvis is looking to find the player inside of Geisha, or at the very least force him a bit farther back so he can have more room to maybe take some extra gunfights here in this final minute, as JMU at that man disadvantage need to find some sort of trade, or they might be in big trouble if they are just stuck in those 2 choke points with crossfires building up here. For Butler, the back wall opened up, so a new opening is found by the offense, but again, there's no other entryway that they have, like from Geisha or even the Black Stairs position, Dan.
Black Stairs always an occupational hazard to hold, but Butler safe and sound at that point. Drone and Drum is cleared out. Shadow does find a return across onto Raikai, but still a 4v3 favoring Butler for the time being. They've not cleared out that Geisha position just yet, and that has to be worried about if you're Havoc. Down go the Track Stingers towards that Drum stairs, but the aggression finally here for JMU. They will attempt to get this diffuser down inside of the T room, and there's nothing to contend with on the Butler side. No C4 available, and the kill from Shadows is there. A triple now for the IQ, and a 2v3 for Butler to save themselves in the tournament. Gravy will pick up a double of their own, but still 2 players to find, and the assist can be there from Jonesy as they aggressed from that Geisha position. Shrine currently occupied. Gravy wants to get on top of the diffuser, but is wary of the bottom floor. Nobody down there for the time being, but they don't know that. Swinging across onto Blue Key, finds a kill, looks to stick the diffuse all the way through. Havoc needs to reposition, isn't in the correct position, but it may not be there. Gravy has no HP, needs to swing for the kill, but just does not have enough time. James Madison University are going to Philadelphia to contend in the NACE Star League 2022 Rainbow Six Siege Grand Finals.
The flawless season now flattened by Butler as they're beaten by JMU, and like you mentioned, the winners of this best of 3 conclude it out and get to go in that LAN environment to face against Kettering about a week or 2 from now as well. An impressive storyline, an impressive map pool, and a really good showing by both teams to make this best of 3 one to remember for the NACE Star League. I honestly was not fully expecting this to happen, Dan, but that full resurgence on the second half of Border, it just felt like after that JMU just never slowed down, and Butler from that point were almost always on the back foot, and that last round was a perfect example of that. Sure, they had loads of denial, sure they had the man advantage, but they just couldn't keep the offense out of the bomb site, and at that point, that was almost the round completely set in stone, because there was just no way for a proper retake unless Gravy was just able to stick that defuse, which he might have been able to, but it really would have been down to the wire at that point, even if he tried sticking that disable.
Yeah, it was already down to the wire at that point. It was down to Shadow's clutch potential versus Gravy's clutch potential, and Shadows found the kills earlier on and was there when required. Here's Gravy sticking it all the way through. Keep an eye on that clock as they hop off of it. I saw this just a second ago, as the aggression would have come in from Havoc, maybe 2 seconds left on the defuse. Honestly, Gravy had to stick it to win that or swing immediately after hopping off of it. Neither came through, and Butler fall because of it. Gravy was really between a rock, a hard place, and an impossible clutch scenario with still 2 players defined in drastically different positions and the objective timer against them. By no means is that loss their fault, nor are they expected to pick up that clutch. Finding the first kill already a monstrous feat, considering the clutch and flick potential they had, but the second kill just not in their favor. And it's James Madison to upset the undefeated team out of East 2 and the team that 2-1 them in the regular season to move on and win when it counts to go to grand finals in Philly.
The map pool as well for a best of 5. I think with us seeing, Theme Park by Kettering all the way back in, yesterday, having Border, Skyscraper, Bank in play, it's going to be a wild ride coming.
I wish I was
December
casting
4th.
that.
Yeah, it just sucks to suck, Dan. Did that all the time today against me, so I'll do it to you. I'll rub it all in your face. I'll tell you all about it, man, as it is going to be a good show. I do wonder if there are still going to be default map picks of Oregon, though, because that is a good map for Kettering, for example, and it is played all throughout, the competitive scene. It's just a staple map pick, so maybe there'll be 1 or 2 defaults and a couple of specific counter bans, on Skyscraper, for example, Kettering against JMU, but that might more or less be it, as, again, in a BO5, a lot of maps just kind of have to slip through, and it's just you accepting that fact and hoping you just get a better outcome on that decider map, or maybe find an upset in your opponent's pick.
It is mathematically impossible for all Chalet, Villa, Club, and Oregon to be banned in a best of 5. So at least one of the 4 is going to slip through. It's more likely for 2 or 3 of them to make it all the way through the ban phase. A note to both teams really quick. Number 1, JMU, ban Theme Park. I'm sorry, you're going to lose it. It's Kettering. Just get that out of the way. On the Kettering side, get Border off the board. I haven't seen you play Border. I don't want to see you play Border because you'd have to do so against JMU, and that team is absolutely nasty. So both of you you have your bans. I'd hate to say it, John, but I don't think you're going to see either of those 2 maps, considering how much research there is for these squads. But an interview now on the cards with the winning squad of James Madison University. We hop in with Jarvis. The clutch potential was there. Jarvis to open things up. A 2-1 victory. Clutch potential through both Border and Skyscraper. From the entirety of the team, it seemingly depended on the round to see who would find the kills. What are your thoughts after the series victory?
That was probably the best game I've ever played of Siege. That was so much fun. I mean, they played a really good game. We played a really good game. I don't think I've ever played that good in a series. We will.
Well, it looked concise for you. And you're going to Philly now. We'll get to that maybe a little bit later on. But opening things up, Bank, your map pick didn't go your way. It came down to round 15. The attacking side was favored. Did you expect that to come through? Because it seemingly looked like you chose the defensive side in OT, yet it didn't go your way.
Yeah, the way the game went, I mean, we went 4-2 on attack. We should have been 5-1 through that 6th round. And then once we got to overtime, I was like, oh shit, I should not have picked defense for overtime because we've not been doing on defense. But, I mean, we won our defense, lost our attack, and then lost the next defense, so.
Well, moving into Border, I know that was your opponent's map pick, but were you expecting that kind of one-sided favoritism when dawning into the second half for your attack? Like the whole ideology is going in, rushing, trying to ignore some of those specific strats on the top floor. Was that something you already had in mind, or is it just kind of like, you know what, they're weak on the bomb site, let's just go rush in?
Well, actually, so Border, when we played them the first time, we were here at our X Labs, and during the first round, we lost complete power. So we had to drive home and then set up on our home PCs. And then, so Border, we're not ready for it. We lost 7-2. And I was thinking, okay, they smoked us on Border last time. I bet they're going to take us there again. And they did. And that's how it turned out. We just had calls. We knew that there was a lot of people upstairs. We said, screw it. Let's just rush them. Hop in the window. Let's go plant. And it worked.
Well, the flexibility was there for the entirety of the series. Your attacking side looked so clean, but it came down to the second time around, especially on Exhibition Office back on Skyscraper, as John just talked about, a little bit back on Bank just the same. It came down to your own flexibility. Talk to me about who makes the calls and what needs to change.
I'm the primary IGL of the team. Everyone else can share their thoughts and let me know, but I make the call at the end of the day. So we were trying to switch it up because we realized on the first map on Bank that when we did something the first time, our normal stuff, it would normally work, but then Butler was really good at adapting to that. And then the second time, they would just absolutely smoke us if we tried to do the same thing. So we were trying to switch it up every round that we were going into, even if we won the last time.
Well, in terms of JMU as a whole, getting the opportunity to now play inside of a LAN here for Philly, how does it feel to be able to represent your team and your school while all still playing like in an in-person event now for the first time officially?
It's awesome. I mean, none of us this year, a lot of us, I was the only person who had actual comp experience coming into it, so we really thought this was just going to be a growing semester, growing year. But we have the skill, and we showed it. We played amazing today. We've played amazing these playoffs, and now we're going to Philly, and it's going to be a ton of fun. Can't wait to see Kettering again.
The question, actually, my final one, lies around Kettering, as a matter of fact. You guys have played them once before. You lost 2-0. It was 7-4 and 7-3. I don't know the maps, so if you'd like to quickly enlighten me on the maps there, what were they?
Oregon and Bank.
So, Oregon Bank,
yeah.
you'd expect them to probably pick up, or at least try to, Oregon theme. You're probably looking around Bank, maybe even Sky, considering the map we just saw. How confident do you feel heading into Grand Finals? It's one best of 5. Map bans mean a whole lot when push comes to shove. What are your thoughts going into the final series of the 2022 fall season?
It's definitely going to be different playing on a LAN, on a stage in front of everyone. That's just going to change everything, how you play, how you feel. And we just got to work these next few weeks building up our map pool so we're ready to run 5 maps if we have to, all across the board.
Well, final question for you, just to close things out. You've earned it by a country mile. 2-1 victory. You guys pushed forward as a squad. But for you specifically, anybody you want to shout out or any final thoughts you have on the series or the season, considering you're now headed to Philly, the floor is yours.
I want to shout out my teammates. They're awesome. We won this together. Shout out JMU and X Labs. Shout out my girlfriend and my parents who are watching and everyone, all my friends at home. And I got to shout out Uncle Smurf because he told me I had to after our game yesterday.
Well, I mean, hey, a win yesterday, a win today. You're headed to Philly. Congratulations on the victory, and thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, John, 2-1. All 3 maps required for the first time on stream in NACE, and a minimum of 3 maps will be required next time these teams play. These teams being the squad of JMU and now Kettering.